Chapter 2338. Inside the hall, Xian Tian looked at Di Yuan silently. Di Yuan furrowed his brows when he saw that Xian Tian wasn't speaking. Suddenly, he sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere and he raised his guard. Di Yuan hesitated for a moment before he said, "Realm Lord?" Xian Tian suddenly said, "You said that you have nothing to do with that young Master Yi?" Di Yuan hurriedly nodded. "That's right. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan has nothing to do with him. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan is willing to help the profound world." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly changed drastically. "Young Master Yi?" This Mystic Sky Realm Lord addressed Yi Xian as Young Master Yi. Right at this moment, Xian Tian spoke abruptly, "It's fine as long as they aren't related at all." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flipped his right hand and pressed it down. In the distance, Di Yuan's expression changed drastically, and he blocked with both hands. Boom! Di Yuan's physical body was shattered, and his soul was gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Di Yuan stared at Xian Tian in disbelief. "Realm Lord Xian Tian, why are you doing this?" Xian Tian stared at Di Yuan and mocked, "You think you're so smart." Di Yuan spoke in a heavy voice, "Mystic Heaven Realm Lord, if you want to kill me, can you let me die knowing the reason behind it?" Xian Tian was expressionless. "Do you know who Young Master Yi is?" Young Master Yi. Hearing these two words, Di Yuan was stunned. Xian Tian glared at Di Yuan and said angrily, "Someone I cannot afford to offend." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve. Boom! Di Yuan's soul was instantly erased. Xian Tian looked coldly at the spot where Di Yuan had disappeared. Idiot! Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian opened the box. Inside was a small set of armor. It was dark gold in color and about the size of a palm. It emitted a faint light, and it was glossy and mysterious. Seeing this palm-sized armor, Yi Xian frowned. Armor? At this moment, the black armor suddenly transformed into a black light and surged into his glabella. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's eyes widened, and two rays of blood-red light shot out from his eyes. Chi-chi! The two beams of bloody light pierced through the river of stars and disappeared into the depths of the boundless starry sky. At the same time, Yi Xian's whole body trembled violently, and the mad demon bloodline in his body was directly activated at this moment. Moreover, the burial sword in his hand was actually trembling violently at this moment as if it was about to be completely activated. Yi Xian was horrified. What the hell? Yi Xian hurriedly began to suppress the power of the bloodline in his body, but he soon discovered that thin scales had appeared all over his body, and on these scales, there was dark blood flowing slowly. His mad demon bloodline was actually unable to suppress this dark blood. Arya's bloodline. At this moment, Yi Xian was certain. This armor must have been made from the scales shed by Arya, and in this armor, there was Arya's blood. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was instantly excited. How terrifying was Arya's armor? Although this armor was Arya's scales after being eliminated, it was absolutely terrifying. Yi Xian looked at the bloodline contained in the armor on his body, and was shocked. No wonder his bloodline could not suppress the power of this bloodline, so it turned out that it was Arya's bloodline. He had to admit that Arya's bloodline was a bit fierce. This was the first time he saw the mad demon bloodline unable to suppress other bloodlines. However, it should be because of him. After all, his mad demon bloodline did not improve much. If it was his father's bloodline, it would definitely be different. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts, and then slowly began to suppress his mad demon bloodline. Under his suppression, the mad demon bloodline gradually calmed down, and Arya's bloodline gradually merged into the armor, and the burial sword also returned to normal. Yi Xian touched the armor on his body, and the first feeling he had was that it was thick. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then took out Daebi, and then directly waved the brush on his body. Boom! the tip of the brush slashed out. Boom! A ray of light erupted from Yi Xian's chest, but he was completely unharmed. Nothing happened. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned at first, and then he laughed. With Arya's armor and his instant invincible sword technique, it would be difficult for him to die. Now, he really wanted to shout, "I'm invincible under 3 swords." However, he still calmed down. I can't shout randomly. In the past, I was often slapped in the face, and I usually can't be handsome for more than 3 days. Although I'm invincible now, I still have to keep a low profile. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then with a thought, the armor on his body quietly merged into his body. Yi Xian grinned, "This time, Dad is a bit like my real father." The man in green was speechless. Yi Xian put away the daebi, then glanced at the scene, smiled slightly, and then turned to leave. It had to be said that the harvest this time was very, very great. After coming out of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian saw Su Tian, and Su Tian quickly bowed respectfully, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "President Su Tian, I'm leaving." Su Tian smiled, "Welcome young Master Yi next time." Yi Xian nodded, "Take care." With that, he rode on his sword and disappeared into the end of the starry sky. Su Tian looked up at the horizon, and said softly, "Di Yuan Celestial Clan is gone." He had already received the news of Di Yuan's death, and with Di Yuan's death, there was no doubt that the Di Yuan Celestial Clan would be swallowed by the surrounding forces. Su Tian sighed softly, "This Di Yuan, in the end, still gambled wrong." Yi Xian did not directly return to Universe of Gods, but went to Celestial Treasure World. When he arrived at Celestial Treasure City, he was stunned. At the entrance of Celestial Treasure City, there were hundreds of bloody heads. What happened? Yi Xian frowned slightly. At this moment, Celestial Treasure City's President Xiaolan appeared in front of Yi Xian, and upon seeing Yi Xian, Xiaolan quickly bowed, "Young Master Yi." His attitude was even more respectful than before. Yi Xian pointed at those heads, "These are?" Xiaolan said solemnly, "They are all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts." Yi Xian was slightly startled, then said, "Mystic Sky Divine Realm?" Xiaolan nodded, "I contacted the Pavilion Master previously, but he did not come, but he sent someone." Then, all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts of Grotto Profound Realm and above are all placed here. Qin Guan. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had to say, although Qin Guan's temper was extremely good, the prerequisite was not to provoke her, especially not to break the rules she set. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What about Mystic Sky?" Xiaolan bowed deeply. The Pavilion Master said that since young Master Yi didn't kill him, then there must be a deeper meaning behind it. So, give young Master Yi face, not him. Give me face. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he smiled, "Little Guan is really considerate." Little Guan. Xiaolan's eyelids instantly twitched when he heard this. This young Master Ye's relationship with the Pavilion Master really isn't ordinary. Yi Xian smiled, "Are you still holding the auction?" Xiaolan nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "When?" Xiaolan hesitated. He paused for a moment, then said, "When does young Master Yi think is suitable?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said with a smile, "Well, you can make your own arrangements." Xiaolan grinned, "It's convenient for young Master Yi." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, "I don't have that much money." Xiaolan glanced at the surroundings, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, do you have any thoughts about the Tao God's ruins?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan said in a low voice, "Young Master Yi, we did some research earlier and discovered that no power can buy this Tao God's ruins. Thus, the Pavilion Master thought of a way, and that is to let everyone buy it together." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Group purchase?" Xiaolan nodded. "Yes. A few powers will buy it together and then share this ruin together." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Are the other powers willing?" Xiao Lan nodded, "I'm willing. That's because there isn't a single force that can monopolize these ruins." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Young Master Yi, when the time comes, we'll directly put you on the list and you won't have to pay any fees." Yi Xian blinked. "When?" Xiaolan smiled lightly, "We're all on the same side, what's wrong with that?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "President Xiaolan is considerate. I, Yi Xian, will never forget this favor." Hearing this, Xiaolan was overjoyed. Young Master Yi is too polite. Saying so, he made an inviting gesture. "Young Master Yi, please enter the pavilion. When the auction is over, I'll inform you." Yi Xian nodded, "All right." Under Xiaolan's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and Xiaolan arranged for him to stay in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's highest standard room. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. Cultivating. His harvest from the battle with Black Heaven's group was bountiful. That was especially true during his battle with Xianmu. He had learned many things during that exchange. Most importantly, he had used a deity to reach the ancient god realm. Now, his goal was to break through to the ancient god realm. Because he felt that the time was right. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. With Dedeabi's help, he once again reached the ancient god realm. He carefully comprehended, and at the same time, he began to burn his universe veins. Breaking through to the next realm required a lot of universe veins. Fortunately, he had the 100 million from his father and 80 million from Black Heaven, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to continue cultivating. Just like this, time passed day by day. Roughly 3 days later, Yi Xian's aura suddenly returned to the Grotto Mystic realm, but very quickly, he advanced from the Grotto Mystic realm to the ancient god realm. This time, his aura gradually stabilized. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. His palms opened, and in an instant, more than 1,000 swords condensed from sword intent appeared around him. Ancient God Realm. However, Yi Xian was not the least bit happy. On the contrary, his brows were tightly locked together. Because he discovered that his ancient God Realm was very superficial, not stable at all. Although it was the ancient God Realm, it was not much different from the demigod realm. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that he had been a little too impatient. Even with Dedeabi's help, this realm was not something that could be easily broken through. He was too impatient. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Right now, he had to slowly stabilize his realm, and it might take a long time. At this time, Xiaolan suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. Xiaolan slightly bowed, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "What's the matter?" Xiaolan nodded, "Young Master Yi, the auction has ended. According to the agreement, you will set off for the Dao God Ruins together." Dao God Ruins. Chapter 2339. The auction had ended. Yi Xian nodded slightly and stood up. Under Xiaolan's lead, he arrived at a large hall. At this moment, there were already 3 people gathered in the hall, 2 men and 1 woman, all of them relatively young. So young? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. When the 2 men and 1 woman saw Yi Xian, they glanced at him, then retracted their gazes. At this moment, Xiaolan suddenly said, "The 4 of you, this time, only the 4 of you know about the Dao God's secret realm. In other words, the 4 of you will share the Dao God's secret realm. As for what you can obtain from it, it will depend on your own luck." After saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian, then quietly retreated. In the hall, the 4 of them were silent. Yi Xian glanced at the 3 of them. The 3 of them sat a little far away and did not communicate with each other. It was obvious that the 3 of them did not know each other. Yi Xian suddenly smiled, "Everyone, there's no need to be so serious. Next, we might have to work together. Introduce yourselves." "I'll go first. My name is Yi Xian, and I'm from the universe of gods." The three of them glanced at Yi Xian, but still did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. The three of you, with all due respect, this kind of mentality is not good. We haven't even reached the Dao God ruins yet, and you've already started to suspect each other. It can be imagined that once we reach the Dao God ruins, we will definitely fight. After saying that, he paused for a moment, then said, "Is there no danger in the Dao God ruins?" The three of them remained silent. Yi Xian smiled. Moreover, do you all have the confidence to kill the other three? The three of them remained silent. Yi Xian continued, I think a win-win cooperation is better than being guarded against and suspicious of each other. What do you think? At this moment, the man on the left suddenly said, Qin Yu. The man on the right also said, Zhu Fan. The woman in the middle looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Xiao Yuer. Yi Xian smiled, let's set off for the Dao God ruins. After he finished speaking, the three of them arrived in the starry sky. Xiaolan appeared in front of Yi Xian once more. Behind him was a starship. Xiaolan smiled lightly, the four of you, the journey to the Dao God ruins is long, so my immortal treasure pavilion has prepared a starship for all of you. This starship can travel through spacetime star fields, it can save all of you a lot of time. As he spoke, his gaze was fixed on Yi Xian. Obviously, this starship was prepared for Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, thank you. Xiaolan smiled and said, you're too courteous. You're too polite. With that, he cupped his fists. Yi. Everyone, take care. Yi Xian nodded, and the four of them boarded the starship. It started up and disappeared into the depths of space. Xiaolan looked at the distant end of the starry sky and said softly, his family is so invincible, yet he still has to work hard. What reason does he have not to work hard? At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian stood on the starship. He was reading an ancient book, and he was engrossed in it. At this moment, a voice came from the side. What are you reading? Yi Xian turned to look. The person who had come was Xiao Yuer. Xiao Yuer wore a light purple dress that reached the ground. There was a white ribbon tied around her waist, which made her slender figure even more graceful. Her facial features were exquisite, and her voice was soft like a spring breeze. Her expression was gentle, and with her large, watery eyes, she was truly a rare beauty. Yi Xian smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Yuer suddenly glanced at the ancient book in Yi Xian's hand. She blinked and said, romance history? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. Xiao Yuer smiled slightly. You like to read love books? Yi Xian smiled and said, this is not an ordinary love book. Within love, there is a criticism of the world. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. He glanced at the surroundings and changed the topic. This starry sky is very beautiful. Xiao Yuer nodded slightly. Indeed. As she spoke, she changed the topic. Young Master Yi, do you have a good relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Yi Xian smiled and said, so Miss Xiao is here to inquire about me. Xiao Yuer blinked and maintained her smile. Young Master Yi, you don't mind, right? Yi Xian smiled lightly. It's just as Miss Xiao thought. My relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is indeed not bad. However, I'm not one of them. Xiao Yuer smiled and said, someone who can make President Xiaolan treat him so politely is definitely not an ordinary person. Yi Xian smiled slightly. I'm just an ordinary person who likes to read. He felt that it was better to speak less of the truth. In any case, no one would believe him even if he said it, and he would be suspected of being pretentious. Keep a low profile. Xiao Yuer glanced at Yi Xian and said, young Master Yi, shall we join forces? Join forces. Yi Xian's brows slightly furrowed. What do you mean? Xiao Yuer smiled. Zhu Fan Qin you have already joined forces. Moreover, their clans are originally related. So, I feel that we can join forces as well. Yi Xian turned his head to look. In the distance, Zhu Fan and Qin Yu stood on one side. Both of them were meditating and seemed to be cultivating. However, he knew that both of them were definitely paying attention to this side. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian frowned deeply. If the two of them didn't join forces, then Xiao Yu would definitely join forces when she came to look for him. Moreover, this woman was talking and laughing with him just now. When he thought of this, Yi Xian turned his head to look at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu blinked her eyes. Her gaze was clear and she had an innocent expression on her face. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. How could he believe that Xiao Yu was so innocent? Those who were sent to fight for the Tao God's ruins would definitely be determined in terms of strength or intelligence. This woman wanted to use him. Scheming? Yi Xian smiled. Miss Xiao, I'm an honest person. I won't beat around the bush. I'll just say what I want to say. To be honest, do you think it's appropriate for us to start messing with each other before we even reach the Tao God's ruins? Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian with a smile still on her face. Yi Xian continued, I know that once we reach the Tao God's ruins, if we discover something good, the four of us will definitely fight for it. However, we haven't reached the Tao God's ruins yet, right? Moreover, are you sure that the Tao God's ruins are safe? What if there's danger inside? The smile on Xiao Yu's face gradually disappeared. Yi Xian continued, I'll say it again. I feel that the four of us should join forces now, at least for now. Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then chuckled. Young Master Yi, you should read less books. This world is much more complicated than you think. If you read too many books, it's easy for your brain to have problems, which is to become pedantic. With that, she turned around and left. On the spot, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He thought to himself, silly girl, if I hadn't read more books, I would have killed the three of you right now. Following that, the starship fell into silence again. Yi Xian realized that he was still unable to unite these people. Actually, his true goal was to see if he could rope these people in, because he realized that these young people had all reached the demigod realm. They had reached the demigod realm at such a young age. Their futures were limitless. However, he realized that this idea of his might not work. These people were all top-notch monstrous geniuses nurtured by their respective clans. They were not that easy to fool. They were silent the entire way. 3 days later, the starship stopped. They're here. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the starry sky not far away, there was a ball of black mist floating there, and within the black mist was the Tao God's ruins. At this moment, Xiao Yu stood up and looked at the ball of black mist. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly vanished on the spot, and in the next moment, they'd entered the ball of black mist. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian, see that? They've joined forces. Yi Xian smiled, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, and then she vanished on the spot as well. After a short moment, Yi Xian arrived at a mountain range, and there was an enormous floating palace in the depths of the mountain range. The surroundings of the palace were surrounded by a forest of mountains that towered into the clouds. This place had experienced countless years, and the entire mountain range was filled with an ancient aura. The trees in the surroundings even blotted out the sky, and they carried a ghastly and oppressive aura. Yi Xian and Xiao Yu arrived before the hall. Qin Yu and Zhu Fan didn't enter the hall, and they stood before the hall that was covered in weeds. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then Zhu Fan spoke abruptly, I never expected that you would really come. Yi Xian smiled, what? Zhu Fan grinned, we discussed earlier that the fewer people that know about the Tao God ruins, the better. Yi Xian frowned slightly. All of you intend to kill me? Zhu Fan gazed at Yi Xian. Yes. A terrifying aura suddenly locked onto Yi Xian, and it belonged to Xiao Yu. Obviously, the three of them had joined forces a long time ago. Xiao Yu gazed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Do you know why we should kill you first?" Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Yu grinned. "Because you look like an idiot when you're studying." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan glanced at the surroundings and said, "Do you know why we're making a move here? Have you noticed? There's a formation here that prevents all divine sense from entering. In other words, all divine sense from the outside world can't reach here. Once we kill you, we can push the blame of your death onto the Tao God realm." Perfect. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I originally wanted to be more sincere and lead all of you to a win-win situation. But now it would seem like..." As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. Xiao Yu ridiculed, "A win-win situation? You're really terrifyingly pedantic." "No, it's not terrifyingly stupid. There's actually someone as naive as you in this world." "How laughable." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Do you know why I didn't join forces with you?" Xiao Yu frowned slightly and was about to speak. Meanwhile, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and sliced lightly. Hiss. Without any warning, Zhu Fan's head flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. It was an instant kill. Xiao Yu and Qin Yu's expressions instantly changed violently. Yi Xian grinned. "Because all of you are no different than ants before me." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. "Sorry, I acted cool again." Both of them were speechless. P.S. Seeking monthly votes. Just one will do. Chapter 2340. At this moment, Xiao Yu and Qin Yu were completely dumbfounded. Instant kill? Yi Xian actually killed a demigod realm expert in an instant? How is this possible? Both of them couldn't believe what they just witnessed. After all, even an ancient god realm expert might not be able to kill a demigod realm expert in an instant. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you attacking?" Qin Yu took a deep look at Yi Xian. "I'm from the Qin clan of Boundary Mountain." Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss. Qin Yu's head flew off before he could finish speaking. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a complete annihilation that didn't even give him a chance to reincarnate. Yi Xian shook his head. "I hate people who use their backers when they can't win." He paused for a moment and continued, "What I mean is, I hate it when others use their backers, but I don't hate it when I use mine." Qin Yu, in the distance, Xiao Yu's face turned pale, and she looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Yu. "What about me?" Xiao Yu's voice trembled. "Why are you so strong? You. Aren't you bullying the weak?" "Bullying the weak?" Yi Xian laughed. He'd always been bullied by others, and he'd never imagined that he would one day be able to bully others. Xiao Yu suddenly said, "I surrender." Yi Xian shook his head. "I refuse." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss. Xiao Yu's head flew off and vanished. She was completely annihilated. Yi Xian chuckled lightly, and then he opened his palm, and 3 spatial rings slowly floated into his hand. They were the spatial rings of these 3 people. But very quickly, his face sank completely. Because he noticed that there were less than 100,000 universe veins in these 3 spatial rings. So few? Yi Xian frowned. Obviously, these 3 people hadn't chosen to bring more universe veins and divine items before coming here. It was probably a precaution. Yi Xian was speechless. Right now, he was really, really poor. Previously, he had a total of 220 million Ian veins. After giving Sumu 50 million, he used the sword skill and broke through and spent another 100 million. Right now, he had less than 70 million Ian veins left. Are there many? In fact, it wasn't much. This was because he still needed many more Yin veins in the future. Moreover, he still needed to nurture the experts of Guanxian Academy. Therefore, 70 million Yin veins was not a lot at all. He was a little poor. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, then turned around and walked towards the main hall. Right now, he only hoped that he could gain a bit more from this mystic realm. When Yi Xian walked to the entrance of the hall, he seemed to think of something. He looked at Dedeabi and asked, "Brother Bai, is it dangerous inside?" He was really scared. Handsome for only 3 days. Even though his current strength was extremely strong, and it was comparable to an ancient god realm expert, he still had to be careful because he might be tricked. Dedeabi did not respond. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "Brother Bai, were you beaten by Qing again?" Dedeabi, Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Dedeabi suddenly said, "I'm really busy, Yi Xian." Yi Xian didn't pester Dedeabi anymore. He gently pushed the door open. As soon as the door opened, an ancient aura rushed out. Yi Xian frowned slightly. His mind stirred, and the sword will surrounded him to protect him. Yi Xian walked into the hall. The entire ground was empty. Not far in front of him, there was a praying mat. On the praying mat, an old man sat cross-legged. The old man wore a loose black robe, and his long hair was casually draped behind him. Yi Xian immediately bowed deeply. "Junior Yi Xian greets Senior." There was no response. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "Senior Daoshan? I'm with Qin Guan." Qin Guan. At this moment, the old man suddenly slowly raised his head. He looked at Yi Xian and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were cloudy, but gradually became clear. The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Miss Qin Guan?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The old man sized up Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled slightly. "Very good." Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Thank you for your praise, Senior." The old man said, "You're here for my inheritance?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Dao Shen was silent. Yi Xian said seriously, "Senior, I think I'm very suitable." The old man smiled. "Why?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "Can I tell the truth?" The old man nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said seriously, "Because Senior won't meet anyone more outstanding than me." The old man was stunned. After a moment, he hesitated and said, "Are all young people nowadays so immodest?" Yi Xian was speechless. The old man suddenly smiled. "You're really not bad. However, you're a swordsman, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man shook his head. "Your Dao has been established. You're not suitable for my inheritance." Yi Xian was silent. He had comprehended the sword Dao of the human world. As the old man said, it was very difficult to inherit someone else's Dao since he had his own Dao. The old man sighed, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. In fact, Yi Xian was indeed not bad and met his requirements. However, Yi Xian was a swordsman, and a swordsman was not suitable for his inheritance. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, this is simple. Give me your inheritance, and I'll find you an outstanding genius, a super genius." The old man was stunned. Yi Xian smiled. "What do you think?" The old man hesitated. Yi Xian smiled. "Even if Senior doesn't believe me, you should believe Miss Qin Guan, right?" Qin Guan. The old man smiled. "Do you have a candidate in mind?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes, she won't disgrace Senior." After a moment of silence, the old man glanced at his surroundings, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. "Fine." Saying so, he opened his palm, and a black scroll slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. "My inheritance is in this scroll." Yi Xian received the scroll and bowed. "I won't disappoint Senior." The old man smiled. Take care. Saying so, his body gradually disappeared. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Senior, do you have anything else? The old man blinked. What? Yi Xian directly said, for example, a time vein god item. The old man shook his head. There were hundreds of millions of time veins before, but Miss Qin Guan took them away. Qin Guan. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yi Xian had to admit that he was completely speechless. Qin Guan took away all the treasures. Moreover, she even took this mystic realm out to sell. This woman was worthy of being called. This woman was indeed a businessman. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. At this moment, the old man suddenly smiled. Little guy, you know Miss Qin Guan? Yi Xian nodded. The old man said softly, she is an extraordinary person. If I had met her earlier, I might have had a different ending. Yi Xian frowned. Normally, with Senior's current strength, it should be very difficult for you to die. But Senior. Saying so, he didn't continue. With Dadeabi here, he could see through the illusion. This old man was not a clone, but the main body. And now, the main body of the old man was disappearing bit by bit. No, it should be said that this old man had died a long time ago. He was just hanging on by a breath. After a moment of silence, the old man sighed. It's a long story. Saying so, he looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. You know, the stronger you are, the smaller you will feel compared to the vast universe. This feeling. Saying so, his expression became even more complicated. Yi Xian was silent. He could actually understand this Tao God because he also had this feeling. Previously, when he fought with his father, he wanted to see how far he was from his father and the others. However, he found that he still couldn't feel his father's true height. Even if he was very strong now. Most of the time, it was not the collapse of the realm, but everyone's vision and realm were limited. For example, a genius in a village might be the first in the village, but what if he went to the town? In the town, he might not be the first. But what if he went to the city? Then he might only be considered ordinary. In the whole country, he might not even be considered ordinary, but in the whole world, or even the whole universe. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Most of the time, one's vision would be limited by one's knowledge. If he had not met Qin and his father, he would definitely think that the ancient god realm was very, very powerful. However, after meeting Qin and his father, he knew that the ancient god realm was considered powerful to him at the moment, but compared to the whole universe, it was still considered low. By this time, the Tao God had completely disappeared. The other party still did not explain how he ended up in such a situation. Yi Xian did not pursue the matter further because it was meaningless. Yi Xian glanced at the scroll in his hand and bowed slightly to the person in front of him. I won't let you down. Saying so, he looked around. The hall was empty, not a single treasure could be found. Yi Xian was speechless. Obviously, Qin Guan had taken everything away. What a bandit. Yi Xian did not linger, turning around and leaving. When Yi Xian left the main hall, 3 terrifying auras suddenly descended from the sky. In the next moment, these 3 auras locked onto him. Yi Xian looked into the distance and saw 3 old men standing not too far away. All 3 of them were ancient god realm experts. Yi Xian frowned, only ancient god realm? Who were they looking down on? He naturally knew that these 3 people in front of him must be the family experts behind Xiao Yu, and the others. At this time, the leading old man in the distance suddenly said, You killed them. Yi Xian nodded, yes. The old man's expression suddenly became ferocious. Who gave you the dog? At this point, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and in the next moment, Yi Xian appeared behind the old man, a sword stuck in his throat. The 3 old men were dumbfounded. Behind the old man, Yi Xian's expression was calm. Ancient god? That's it? The 3 old men. Chapter 23:41. The remaining two ancient god realm experts were in a state of complete chaos. He'd instantly killed an ancient god with a single strike of his sword. Meanwhile, one of the ancient god realm experts spoke in a trembling voice. You're an ancient god realm expert. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Ancient god realm expert? What kind of trash is that? As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed with his sword. Hiss. Two rays of sword energy pierced through the space between the two old men's brows, and they were instantly annihilated. Yi Xian opened his palm, and 3 spatial rings slowly floated into his palm. Yi Xian glanced at them, and he was still slightly disappointed. The 3 spatial rings actually contained less than 10 million universe veins. They were truly too poor. Of course, it was better than nothing. Yi Xian put the spatial rings away, turned around, and left. Not long after Yi Xian left, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared here, and his expression was extremely unsightly as he glanced at the battlefield. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man appeared not too far away from the white-haired old man. The middle-aged man glanced at the battlefield and said, "Brother Qin Gu, looks like they've met with misfortune." Qin Gu. He was the current patriarch of the Qin clan. Qin Gu's face was expressionless. "Zhuan, what do you think?" Zhuan. The current patriarch of the Zhu clan. Zhuan fell silent for a moment before he said, "That fellow, Yi Xian, isn't simple." Qin Gu's expression was gloomy. "So what?" Zhuan sighed softly. Qin Gu's face was expressionless. "Look at that hall in the distance. It's empty. This means that he's obtained the Tao God's inheritance." The Tao God's inheritance. Zhu An's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Both he and Qin Gu were at the ancient god realm now, and the greatest temptation to them was the realm above the ancient god realm. Moreover, throughout the universe, only the Tao God had broken through to the ancient god realm. In other words, the Tao God's inheritance was their last hope. The reason they'd allowed the younger generation to explore this secret realm was because if they allowed the older generation to do it, then they would really have to fight to the death. So, they'd come to a tacit agreement to let the younger generation fight for it. Only in this way would there be no internal strife between the large clans. But they'd never imagined that it would actually benefit others. Qin Gu said in a low voice, "This enmity must be avenged." Zhuan nodded. Indeed. Actually, both of them were well aware that they could not give up on the inheritance of the Tao God. Zhuan suddenly asked, "What about that person from the Shao clan?" Qin Gu glanced around and said, "Who knows?" Zhuan said solemnly, "We have to contact her. Our 3 clans must join forces now." After a moment of silence, Qin Gu said, "To the Shao clan." With that, the 2 of them disappeared on the spot. Not long after they left, a beautiful woman in a red dress appeared here. She was the current patriarch of the Shao clan, Shao Wan. There was a young woman by Shao Wan's side, and this young woman was 60 to 70% similar to Shao Yu. Shao Wan suddenly asked, "Ling, what do you think?" After a moment of silence, the girl said, "According to my investigation, this person is a super distinguished guest of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In other words, he has a close relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Ant died in the hands of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion didn't give face to the Shao clan because of him. It's simple. The force behind this person is stronger than the Shao clan." Auntie. It was Madame Shao that Yi Xian had encountered at Celestial Treasure City. Shao Wan asked. "Anything else?" The young woman continued, "He was pursued in the ancient world of mysteries, but he's still alive and well. However, I don't know if it's because of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion or because of the mysterious force behind him." Shao Wan fell silent for a moment before she said, "Continue." The young woman sighed softly, "We can't take revenge." Shao Wan closed her eyes slowly. The inheritance of the Tao God. The young woman spoke in a low voice, "Aunt, while the inheritance of the Tao God is important, his life and the Shao clan are even more important. Moreover, if you really want to, then you can wait. Because it won't be long before the Zhu and Qin clans act against him. At that time, we'll be able to see what happens to them. Xiao Wan fell silent for a moment before she said, "I'll do as you say." As soon as she finished speaking, both of them vanished on the spot. Yi Xian had returned to Guanxian Academy in the universe of gods. At this moment, a huge change had occurred in Guanxian Academy. Presently, there were over 3,000 students in Guanxian Academy, and there were less than 100 students in Weiyuan. Moreover, the academy was eliminating many people every day. This was suggested by Qing Qiu. There were no restrictions when they entered, but after entering, if they didn't work hard and diligently, they would be eliminated and leave the academy. Therefore, many poor students worked very hard after entering Guanxian Academy because they knew that this was their only chance to change their fate. The assessment of the two academies was different. Weiyuan focused on combat strength, while the Civil Academy focused on literary attainments. The two academies took completely different paths. When Yi Xian returned to Guanxian Academy, Qing Qiu immediately looked for him. In the backyard, Yi Xian sat while Qing Qiu stood with a cup of tea in her hand. Qing Qiu spoke in a low voice, "Brother young master, if we continue to develop, Weiyuan's strength will definitely crush the Civil Academy. There won't be any problems now, but many years later, when master, brother young master, and I are no longer around, the Civil Academy will be completely suppressed by Weiyuan. At that time, the academy might be seriously divided and have internal strife. This. You have to think of a way." Yi Xian thought for a while, then smiled. "There's only one way." Qing Qiu was curious. "What is it?" Yi Xian smiled. "Find a dean who is skilled in both literature and martial arts, a dean who is extremely powerful. This way, we can suppress the two academies." Qing Qiu thought for a while, then nodded. "That's possible." Yi Xian smiled. "It's not that easy to balance, but we have to work hard. When the time comes, there will be more rules. Otherwise, as you said, Weiyuan will be too powerful in the future and completely suppress the Civil Academy." Qing Qiu nodded slightly. She seemed to have thought of something, then blinked. "Brother young master, didn't you notice anything?" Yi Xian was a little confused. "Notice what?" Qing Qiu glared at Yi Xian, then turned to leave. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This girl had actually reached Dongxian. Dongxian. How long had it been? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. In all fairness, he thought he was a monstrous genius, a real monstrous genius. Moreover, he had Dedeabi in his father's help, but he was only an ancient god realm. Yet this girl had already reached Dongxian. How many days had she been cultivating? This was ridiculous. Even Yi Xian felt that this was not normal. This Qing Qiu was probably a super big shot, not weaker than his father, Dedeabi, and Dedeabi. Then who could it be? Yi Xian sighed softly. He missed Xiao Ta a little. If Xiao Ta was here, he would know. After all, he did not know much about his father's era, but Xiao Ta did. I wonder how Xiao Ta is doing now. And Xiao Hun. Was the Qingxian sword modified by Qing again? And Xiaoan. Xiaoan must have improved a lot by following Qing heir, right? After all, he was following Qing heir. At this moment, a loud laugh came from the distant sky. Brother Yi, I'm here. Yi Xian looked up at the sky. In the next moment, a man appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing the person, Yi Xian was stunned. It was Dao Ling. Yi Xian stood up and smiled. Dao Ling. He looked behind Dao Ling and asked, where are Tianqi, Shitian, and Jun Xie? Dao Ling smiled. They will be here some time later. My family is fine, so I rushed here first. As he spoke, he sized Yi Xian up. Then he said, what level are you in now? Yi Xian smiled. What realm are you in? Dao Ling chuckled. Peak mysterious realm. I'll be at Dongxian soon. Yi Xian frowned. Only peak mysterious realm? Dao Ling was taken aback. What realm are you in? Yi Xian smiled. Just ancient god realm. Ancient god realm. Dao Ling's expression froze. Before coming here, he had met President Nanqing of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, so he knew some of the realms. But he didn't expect Yi Xian to have reached ancient god realm so fast. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled. Why? Dao Ling sighed. You're a freak. I thought I was fast enough, but you're faster than me. Yi Xian sized Dao Ling up and then said, Are you already at the peak of the Zhishuan realm? Dao Ling nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. Lacking money? Dao Ling nodded. If I have enough time veins, I should be able to reach ancient god realm. I have a 70 to 80% chance. Yi Xian smiled. How much do you need? Dao Ling shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian opened his palm and a storage ring floated in front of Dao Ling. There were 10 million time veins in the storage ring. Yi Xian said with a smile, Take them. Dao Ling was taken aback and said, Brother Yi, what should we do? I can't. Even so, he had already snatched the storage ring. Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Ling held the storage ring in his hand and said with a trembling voice, Should have come to find you earlier. Yi Xian, Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian. Brother Yi, I'm going to cultivate. If I have to fight in the future, I won't even frown if I have to climb a mountain of blades or dive into a sea of flames. He turned and left. Yi Xian, Dao Ling naturally wanted to join Wu Yuan. Therefore, he went to look for Qing Qiu. When he saw Qing Qiu, he was stunned. Then he said, Little girl, are you the dean of Wu Yuan? Qing Qiu looked at Dao Ling, What did you call me? Dao Ling smiled. Little girl. Qing Qiu suddenly disappeared from the spot. Dao Ling's expression changed drastically. He raised his arms to block. Boom! In an instant, Dao Ling flew above the clouds. The next moment, a shadow suddenly descended from the sky and stomped down. Boom! Dao Ling instantly fell from the sky and smashed into the depths of a mountain range. In the air, Qing Qiu clapped her hands. I only have one brother. After saying that, she took out a steamed bun. She took a bite and turned to leave. Dao Ling. P.S. I also like to read. I also hate those authors who update slowly. They have no integrity at all. But for some reason, I don't hate myself. Chapter 2342. In the abyss, Dao Ling looked at the sky in disbelief. He was beaten up by a little girl? It was ridiculous. After a while, Dao Ling said in a deep voice, I have to stay away from Brother Ye's younger sisters in the future. He finally realized it. This Brother Yi himself wasn't much, but these younger sisters were each more perverted than the other. Cherish your life and stay away from Yi Xian's younger sisters. In the following time, Yi Xian began to develop Guanxian Academy. As his father had said, if he wanted to change the world, he couldn't just talk about it. He had to do it. Now, this was indeed his lifelong goal. One couldn't just be pretentious in life. He had to do something meaningful. In the hall, Yi Xian quietly listened to Qing Qiu and Xu Xian's reports. Now, Guanxian Academy had reached the see-through realm, including Qing Qiu, Yan Bei, and Xiu Fan. 3 see-through realm. It could be said that Guanxian Academy was the strongest in the universe of gods. This was under the circumstances that Yi Xian was excluded. If Yi Xian was included, Guanxian Academy would be invincible in the universe of gods. In fact, Yi Xian alone was enough to make the Academy invincible in the universe of gods. Moreover, the major forces in the universe of gods were very friendly to Guanxian Academy. Not only that, they also tried their best to send their own people to Guanxian Academy because there was the greatest room for improvement. It could be said that Guanxian Academy was developing rapidly. In the hall, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Qing Qiu. "How are the disciples of Wuyuan?" Qing Qiu said, "There are a total of 160 disciples in Wuyuan. I carefully selected them. According to your request, I didn't choose the most talented ones. I also chose many with good temperament and are able to endure hardships. Their cultivation speed is indeed much slower than those monstrous geniuses, but I believe that they won't be any worse than those monstrous geniuses in the future. There is no end to the path of martial arts. A moment of victory or defeat doesn't mean anything. Those who walk to the end will have the last laugh." Yi Xian smiled. "Very good." As he spoke, he turned to look at Shu Xian. "Elder Xian, you must also remember that the students taught by the Institute of Literature cannot be inflexible, or flexible. Do you understand?" He was also afraid of those bookworms, the kind who liked to preach great principles but did not put them into practice. This kind of people was the most terrifying. They would harm the country and the people. Shu Xian nodded. "I understand." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Elder Xian, Qingqiu, from now on, we will go in two directions. In the first direction, while you let them cultivate, you must also take them to the secular world to have a look. Let them truly experience the sufferings of the human world. To read 10,000 books and travel 10,000 miles, both are indispensable." Elder Xian smiled. "Very good." Qingqiu also nodded. "Sure." Yi Xian continued, "Also, we need to take them to see the universe outside, let them know how big it is, let them know how insignificant they are. Only when they know how insignificant they are will they not be complacent, and will work harder." Qingqiu suddenly said, "Elder brother, I have to remind you that we are short of money." "Short of money?" Yi Xian nodded. "How much?" Qingqiu rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "Elder brother, you can't do this." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Qingqiu said in a deep voice, "Our institute is different from the past. I mean that we need to be self-reliant. What I mean is that we need to be self-reliant. We can't keep spending your money. After all, you don't have unlimited money." Yi Xian thought for a while and said, "What do you think?" Qingqiu pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "I've investigated how the other powers earn money during this period of time, and I noticed that the Celestial Treasure Pavilion earns the most money. However, it's not suitable for us to do business." Yi Xian frowned. "Sell books?" Qingqiu smiled and said, "Not ordinary books, but books about cultivation. These books are very helpful to cultivation, and we can auction them off. Apart from that, we can also cooperate with many factions and let our students give lectures. Of course, they'll be about cultivation," as she said, the corners of her mouth curled up. "Don't we have the Divine Path Code given by Pavilion Master Qingguan? We can let our students go to other universes to give lectures about the Divine Path Code, and we will charge a fee for each lecture. In this way, we can train our students and earn money." Yi Xian said with a smile. "That's a good idea." Qingqiu nodded. "Big brother Sword Master, you have a rather wide network of connections. If it's possible, you can get some books that are similar to the Divine Tao Codex. In this way, our academy wouldn't have to worry about the problem of funds in the near future." Yi Xian nodded. "Sure." After the three of them discussed for a moment, Shu Xian retreated. Yi Xian suddenly looked towards Qingqiu. He opened his palm, and the Tao God's inheritance scroll slowly floated in front of Qingqiu. "Girl, this is the inheritance of a senior. It should be of help to you." In the end, he gave this inheritance to Qingqiu because no one was more suitable than her. Qingqiu looked at the inheritance scroll and shook her head. "Brother, I don't need it." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Qing Qiu smiled. I have my own Dao, and I will only walk my own Dao. Yi Xian was helpless. He knew that Qing Qiu had her own Dao like him. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for her to accept someone else's orthodoxy. Qing Qiu giggled. Give it to the right person. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Sure. After saying that, he put away the scroll. He felt a little helpless in his heart. This girl's cultivation could only be described in one word: awesome. Qing Qiu suddenly said, Brother, I think we can use the universe of gods as a foundation and change it first. Then, we can slowly go out and change the outside world. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Continue. Qing Qiu nodded. Changing the universe of gods might affect the interests of other forces. However, this isn't a big problem because we can lure them with benefits. Now, they want to join our Guanxian Academy. As long as we can provide them with enough benefits, they will be willing to change. If they don't change, they will be eliminated. She looked at Yi Xian. Brother, I know you're very benevolent. Most of the time, you don't want to be the bad guy. However, I have to tell you that if we want to change the world and the rules, we have to overthrow many of the bad forces, especially those that are cruel and heartless. We can tempt those good forces with benefits, but when it comes to those evil and wicked forces, we have to use thunderous methods to annihilate them. She walked in front of Yi Xian and passed the tea to Yi Xian. Our goal isn't to be the only one. However, we have to be the only one. If you're not the only one, who will listen to you? Therefore, we have to be benevolent and treat all forces well. We also have to use thunderous means. Yi Xian looked at Qing Qiu silently. Qing Qiu blinked. Brother, are you worried? Yi Xian nodded. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about the academy. Qing Qiu was silent for a moment. I know what you're worried about. When we become stronger, you're afraid that the academy will gradually go against its original intentions. Just like what the book said, the young dragon slayer will eventually become an evil dragon, right? Yi Xian nodded. Qing Qiu smiled. As long as you're here, the academy will never change. Yi Xian asked, what if I'm gone? Qing Qiu smiled. There's still me. With me around, the academy will never fall into chaos. Yi Xian smiled. What if you're gone? Qing Qiu smiled. Brother, you're wrong to think like this. What we need to do is to do what we can. It's not good to think too much about the future. Of course, I can't help but think that if I'm gone one day, I'll definitely choose a more outstanding person for the academy and let him manage the academy. As for what happens after that, it's something for the next dean to think about. Do what we can. Yi Xian thought for a while and smiled. You're right. Qing Qiu suddenly handed a cup of tea to Yi Xian. Brother, have some tea. Yi Xian took the teacup and took a sip. Then he said, go ahead and do it. I'll support you. Whether it's money or anything else, just let me know if you need anything. Qing Qiu nodded. Okay. She hesitated for a while. As far as I know, you're from Qing City, right? Yi Xian nodded. Qing Qiu smiled. I want to start with these small worlds. Let's start with Qing City. It just so happens that there's an academy in Qing City. Let's start with the small worlds, then slowly encircle the larger worlds. Finally, we'll change the entire universe. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Qing Qiu grinned. I want money. Yi Xian shook his head. How much? He knew that doing these things would definitely require money. Qing Qiu raised a finger. Yi Xian blinked. 5 million universe veins? Qing Qiu shook his head. 50 million. Yi Xian's expression froze. Qing Qiu smiled. Do I? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. With that, he opened his palm. A spatial ring flew to Qingqiu. Inside the spatial ring, there wasn't 50 million, but 70 million. Qingqiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Those 20 million universe veins are for you. You need a lot of universe veins to cultivate now, right? Qingqiu nodded. Yi Xian smiled. You can use 2,000 first. If it's not enough, come find me. Qingqiu glanced at Yi Xian. Okay. Yi Xian smiled. I'm going to work. With that, he turned and left. Qingqiu looked at Yi Xian in the distance. Her right hand clenched the spatial ring. Her eyes were full of determination. Brother, I want the universe to change because of you. I want all living beings in the universe to believe in you. With that, she slowly closed her eyes. Only by using the belief of all living beings as your sword can you reach the level of the three of them. With that, she suddenly looked a little dazed. What did she just say? Qingqiu frowned. She was a little puzzled. Chapter 23:43. In the bamboo forest, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He was very worried. He only had 10 million universe veins left. What could he do with just 10 million? What should he do? Yi Xian was helpless. He had to obtain universe veins. Moreover, he knew that in the future, there would be more and more things that needed universe veins. A little bit of money would not be enough to solve the problem. The academy had not completely gotten on the right track, so it could not start to make a profit in a short period of time. During this period, it needed his support. Otherwise, the academy's development would be limited. Money. Yi Xian looked at the spatial ring in his hand and fell into silence. 200 million. The 200 million universe veins from before would soon be used up. Moreover, if he wanted to nurture ancient god realm and ancient god realm cultivators, he would need even more universe veins. Even if he wanted to cultivate, he had no way to do so. Every time he cultivated his sword skill, he had to spend a huge amount of money. Without money, he couldn't break through the current universe and jump out. Awkward. Earn money. Yi Xian sighed. He had to go out and earn money. Sell the Divine Tao Codex? He had thought about it, but he felt that selling the book that Qin Guan had given him wasn't a good idea. However, he could use another method. For example, giving a lecture. Thinking of this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth rose slightly. If he went to give a lecture and spread the Divine Tao Codex, the significance would be completely different. Thinking of this, Yi Xian got up and was about to leave. At this moment, a student came before Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Dean, Immortal Ancient City's Lady Xian Guyao is here to visit. Immortal Ancient City. Yi Xian was slightly startled, and then he hurriedly said, "Invite her in." The student bowed slightly and was about to leave when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Forget it. I'll go myself." After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. At the entrance of Guanxian Academy, Yi Xian saw Xian Guyao. Today, Xian Guyao was wearing a snow-white dress. Her hair was as black as ink, and she stood tall like a jade. She was quiet and elegant, and her watery eyes carried a faint sorrow that made others feel pity for her. Xian Gudian was slightly stunned when he saw Yi Xian, and then he said softly, "You've returned." Yi Xian smiled and said, "The next time you come to find me, you don't need to report, just go in directly." Xian Gudian's expression was calm. "I wouldn't dare." "You're the dean of Guanxian Academy now." Yi Xian smiled. "Why are you angry?" Xian Gudian was expressionless. "No." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't be angry. I've only just returned. There are many new rules in the academy, so I don't know about them. However, I have already told them. The next time you come to the academy, you can go in and find me directly." Xian Gudian looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian sized up Immortal Ancient Heaven and was astonished. We already reached Profound Grotto? Xian Gudian nodded. Yi Xian gave her a thumbs up. Amazing. My God. Xian Gudian instantly blushed when she heard this, and she glared angrily at Yi Xian. You're starting to be indecent again. Yi Xian roared with laughter, and then he said, I'm going to give a lecture. Are you interested in going with me? Xian Gudian's beautiful brows knit together slightly. A lecture? Yi Xian nodded. The academy has just been established, so everything is difficult, especially when it comes to money. So, I need to give lectures and earn some money. Xian Gudian said in a low voice, Do you lack a lot? Yi Xian nodded. Xian Gudian suddenly withdrew a spatial ring and passed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at it, and there were actually 30 million universe veins within it. Yi Xian was astounded. What are you doing? Xian Gudian spoke indifferently, Take it and use it. Yi Xian shook his head repeatedly. No, I can't take your universe veins. Xian Gudian looked coldly at Yi Xian. Why can't you take my universe veins? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Don't be angry. I don't have any other intentions, it's just that, Xian Gudian said coldly, Just what? Is it too little? Yi Xian smiled bitterly again. You know that's not what I meant. Xian Gudian placed the spatial ring in Yi Xian's hand and said softly, Wait until you have money. It won't be too late to return it to me then. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Do your parents know that you are doing this? Xian Gudian's expression was calm. I am the next patriarch of the ancient immortal clan. Everything in the ancient immortal clan is mine. Yi Xian, Xian Gudian glanced at Yi Xian. You are going to give a lecture, so I won't go. Next time, if you come back, can you come to Ancient Immortal City as a guest? Ancient Immortal City as a guest. Yi Xian remained silent. He had said that he wouldn't go to Ancient Immortal City again. It was clear that Xian Gudian still couldn't let go of this matter. Xian Gudian said softly, If you are unwilling, it is fine. It was my ancient immortal clan that went too far. Yi Xian smiled. You are you, and the ancient immortal clan is the ancient immortal clan. Xian Gudian looked at Yi Xian. But I am the next patriarch of the ancient immortal clan. The ancient immortal clan is mine. Yi Xian smiled. I know. Don't worry about this. I am no longer angry. Really? Xian Gudian was silent for a moment before saying, Take care. After saying that, she turned and left. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Time vain. Xian Gudian didn't even turn her head. If you don't like it, then throw it away. After saying that, she disappeared into the horizon. In the same place, Yi Xian looked at the spatial ring in his hand and shook his head with a sigh. He seemed to have the potential to live off a woman. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian turned and left. Guanxian Academy had Qing Qiu and Xu Xian, so he was at ease. His current goal was to make money. This time, he decided to go to Immortal Treasure City. That was the real stage. He had placed the Tao God inheritance with Xu Xian. Once Tian Qi arrived, Xu Xian would pass the Tao God inheritance to Tian Qi. Among these people, he felt that Tian Qi was the most suitable. This fellow's mind was too simple, and when he cultivated, he would be very terrifying. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stopped and changed into a white robe. There were 2 words engraved on the left chest, Guanxian. At his waist, there was a dadeabi without a pen case. After changing into the new clothes, Yi Xian started to tidy up his hair. He casually draped his hair behind him, and there was a trace of elegance in his unruly manner. Then, he took out a thick ancient book. This time, he brought many books with him that were annotated by Xu Xian. Most of them were about cultivation, but there were also some ancient books about literature. Since he was out to teach, he naturally had to explain in detail. And the annotations of Shu Xian were very, very detailed. After dressing up, Yi Xian disappeared into the starry sky. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived at Immortal Treasure City. At the entrance of Immortal Treasure City, the heads of the profound god world were still there. Anyone who entered Immortal Treasure City would see these heads. Ah! The profound god world, which was said to have ancient god realms, still couldn't shake Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Therefore, many people were even more curious about this Immortal Treasure Pavilion. How terrifying was this Immortal Treasure Pavilion? When Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of Immortal Treasure City, Xiaolan immediately came out to greet him. Xiaolan was slightly stunned when he saw Yi Xian's attire, and then he said respectfully, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "President Xiaolan." Xiaolan grinned, "Young Master Yi, how have you been?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'm fine. I'm just slightly poor." The corners of Xiaolan's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he didn't dare reply. Yi Xian suddenly said, "President Xiaolan, I want to give a lecture at Immortal Treasure City." Xiaolan frowned, "Lecture?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes. President Xiaolan, I don't have much of a reputation right now, so I'm sure no one will come to listen. I want you to help me publicize it. The powers in the universe will definitely give face to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion and allow their people to listen to my lecture. As for the more, the better." Xiaolan hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll arrange it." Yi Xian smiled, "Thank you." Xiaolan grinned, "Young Master Yi, you're too courteous." As soon as he finished speaking, he left. Yi Xian was arranged to stay in the most distinguished room in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion again. Yi Xian sighed softly in the starry sky. The Immortal Treasure Pavilion is really making money. Just the Immortal Treasure Pavilion alone brings a huge amount of income to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion every month. Besides that, this Immortal Treasure City collects rent every year. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian simply felt ashamed. The wealth of this rich woman, Qin Guan, is truly unimaginable. A thought suddenly arose in Yi Xian's mind. Should I live off a woman? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, even Yi Xian himself was shocked. This Qin Guan isn't easy to deal with, and I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on to her. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and started to organize the lecture he was going to give. He wasn't famous now, so there definitely wouldn't be many people when he gave a lecture. So, this first lecture was especially important because he had to make a name for himself. So, he directly prepared to talk about the Divine Tao Code in the first lecture. One day later, Xiaolan came to Yi Xian's room and bowed respectfully, "Young Master Yi, everyone is here." Yi Xian looked at Xiaolan, "How many people?" Xiaolan smiled, "About 100,000 people. 100,000 people." Yi Xian nodded, "Not bad." As he said that, he stood up, "Let's go." In a certain starry sky, this starry sky was a martial arts field that was opened up by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Now, it was set up as a lecture field by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. At this moment, there were more than 100,000 people gathered here. However, these 100,000 people were somewhat dumbfounded. Lecture? Yi Xian? Who is this? If it wasn't for the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, they wouldn't have come at all. At this moment, a sword light suddenly appeared in the depths of the starry sky. The next moment, Yi Xian appeared on the podium. Seeing Yi Xian, everyone's expression instantly became strange. Obviously, they were surprised that Yi Xian was so young. Yi Xian smiled, then said, "Thank you all for listening to my lecture. Today, I will talk about the Divine Tao Code." Below the podium, everyone was silent. At this moment, the dayabi on Yi Xian's waist slightly trembled, and the next moment, Yi Xian's aura directly rose. In an instant, Yi Xian's aura directly rose from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm. At this moment, the 100,000 people below were dumbfounded. Ancient god realm. Someone said in shock, "Holy shit. So amazing." Yi Xian suddenly smiled, First, let me introduce myself. I am Yi Xian, the Dean of the Guanxian Academy. Everyone, don't think that I am an ancient god realm, it is actually nothing. My real identity is actually a second generation. Today, I will talk about how to act cool. Oh, no, how to learn, everyone. P.S. I have already thought it through. If I can't become a great god after writing for 6 years, then I will become a water god. Since I am a god, I can make do with it. Chapter 23:44. Yi Xian felt slightly embarrassed. Damn it. I actually said something wrong. Down below, everyone was looking at Yi Xian with an odd expression. Yi Xian calmed himself down, and then he withdrew Qin Guan's Divine Tao Codex. He opened it and said, "Today, I'll tell all of you about this book that I wrote." When he spoke up to hear, he glanced at Xiaolan, hesitated for a moment, and then changed his words. "Tell us about the Divine Tao Codex written by Miss Qin Guan." Xiaolan felt slightly embarrassed. This young Master Yi had almost said that he'd written the Divine Tao Codex himself. Perhaps others weren't aware, but he was. The Divine Tao Codex had been written by Qin Guan. Yi Xian continued. The Divine Tao Codex contains divine techniques, Taoist techniques, and magic techniques. Simply speaking, it's all sorts of divine techniques. Besides that, this book has some explanations about cultivation. Next, we'll start with magic techniques. In the beginning, everyone didn't care. However, as Yi Xian went on, everyone's expressions instantly changed. Magic techniques. Yi Xian introduced almost 9 types of top-rate magic techniques, and every single one of them was extremely rare and extremely powerful. However, Yi Xian refused to talk about the cultivation methods of these magic techniques. Everyone felt even more anticipation. If they could cultivate them, then it would greatly improve their strength. Right at this moment, everyone suddenly became excited. Because he'd started talking about how to cultivate. As he spoke, Yi Xian suddenly stopped at a critical point. Everyone below was stunned. One of them couldn't help but say, "Young Master Yi, continue." Yi Xian grinned. That's all for today. Let's hear the next part of the explanation. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Everyone was stunned. In the next moment, all of them couldn't take it anymore. A young man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He gazed at Yi Xian and said furiously, "Continue." Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword flew out, directly pointing at the young man's forehead. "What did you say?" The young man's face instantly turned pale. He hesitated for a moment, and then said in a trembling voice, "Didn't say anything." Yi Xian nodded and turned to leave. Everyone, after Yi Xian left, a commotion broke out. At the most crucial moment. Yi Xian actually stopped at the most crucial moment. This was infuriating. Many people went to find Xiaolan. Regarding this, Xiaolan was also very helpless. He couldn't control Yi Xian. The crowd did not leave. They were still making a ruckus. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already returned to his room. At this time, Xiaolan came to Yi Xian's room. Xiaolan smiled. "Young Master Yi, are you still going to teach?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan asked, "Tomorrow?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan smiled. "All right." With that, he was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Tomorrow is not a free lecture. If you want to listen to the lecture, everyone has to pay 1,000 universe veins. 1,000 universe veins." Xiaolan was stunned. 1,000 universe veins. Was that a lot? Actually, it was not a lot. But for people in Celestial Treasure Pavilion, it was definitely not a lot. But for some independent cultivators, it was not a small number. After all, not everyone was that rich. Of course, the value of Yi Xian's divine path code far exceeded this price. Not to mention 1,000 universe veins, even 100 million universe veins was worth it. For some cultivators, this was a book that could really change their fate. Xiaolan bowed slightly and then left. Xiaolan came to the lecture area. At this moment, everyone was still waiting. Xiaolan's expression was calm. Young Master Yi said, "We will continue the lecture tomorrow, but tomorrow, we will start charging fees. One class, 1,000 universe veins per person, 1,000 universe veins." As soon as he said this, there was an uproar. Soon, some people started cursing. 1,000 universe veins per class. What the hell is he thinking? That's right. Why doesn't he just rob a bank? He's really shameless. He's actually charging fees. I'm giving him face by listening to his lecture, but he's actually charging fees. What the hell? Who does he think he is? He's charging fees for his lecture. Tui. He's charging fees for his lecture. How immoral. What the hell is he? I'm going to freeload, spend money. Tui, dream on. Some people left amidst cursing. Moreover, as more and more people cursed, more and more people left. In just a short while, there were less than 2,000 people left. Xiaolan looked at the people who left and fell silent. He had discovered something terrifying. Most of those who left were independent cultivators. As for the disciples of the influential families, none of them left. Clearly, they had discovered the value of the divine path code that Yi Xian was talking about. Of course, there was another reason. 1,000 universe veins was really nothing to them. Xiaolan sighed softly and left. The next day, Yi Xian once again came to the practice field. At this time, there were far fewer people than yesterday. There were less than 20,000 people left. More than 80,000 people left. Yi Xian sighed softly. He did not say anything and took out the divine path code to continue his lecture. This time, he directly talked about the cultivation methods of the 9 types of magic arts. When Yi Xian began to talk about those cultivation methods, the people below were so excited that they could not control themselves. They had made a killing. At this moment, this was what everyone thought. These 9 spells were personally created by Qin Guan. Their power was absolutely invincible among those at the same level. At the same level, most of the time, it was a competition of spells and external objects. Time passed bit by bit. At night, Yi Xian closed the divine path code. He looked at the people below and smiled. Is it worth it? Everyone said in unison, it's worth it. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm going to go again tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Taoist techniques. However, there aren't many Taoist techniques. There are only 3 types. Moreover, they are extremely difficult to cultivate. One session costs 1,000 universe veins. Are you guys still coming? At this moment, a young man suddenly stood up and bowed to Yi Xian. Dean Yi is righteous. Righteous. It had to be said that Yi Xian was righteous. Because they knew how valuable the divine path code that Yi Xian was talking about was. 1,000 universe veins? It was as cheap as cabbages. Yi Xian smiled slightly. I don't teach to earn money. I only teach to benefit the cultivators of the world. The reason I take some money symbolically is to let everyone understand a principle. That is, you can't reap without sowing. You can't take it for granted. We should respect the knowledge and results of others. With that, he got up and left. Behind him, the people revealed expressions of admiration. The virtuous Dean Yi. In the distance, Xiaolan walked to Yi Xian's side and handed a spatial ring to Yi Xian. There were 20 million universe veins in the spatial ring. 20 million. Yi Xian put it away without batting an eyelid. How fragrant. With that, he walked off into the distance. Xiaolan, the people present were extremely excited. They had made a killing, and they were overjoyed. As if they thought of something, they started to call people. They called their friends, their family members. Soon, more and more people rushed towards the celestial treasure pavilion. After Yi Xian returned to his room, he looked at the spatial ring in front of him. There were 30 million universe veins in the spatial ring, and 20 million was earned just now. One had to say, the money earned this way was different. There was a sense of accomplishment. Making money with knowledge. Although he didn't write the book, he spread the knowledge himself. Strictly speaking, his contribution was the same as Qin Guan's. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled. He lightly patted his face. His skin seemed to be a bit thick. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian began to cultivate instant invincibility. He didn't jump into the universe because it was too expensive. He couldn't bear to play like that. He was studying the details of instant invincibility. Besides that, he would consolidate his realm every day when he had time. Because right now, his ancient god realm was very, very exaggerated. Take it slow. Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry. What he had now was time. The next day, after tidying up, Yi Xian went to the training field. There were more than 30,000 people attending the class today. About 10,000 more than the day before. Xiaolan walked to Yi Xian's side and smiled. These are the newcomers. They also want to listen to young Master Ye's class. Yi Xian looked at the crowd and smiled. Thank you for listening to my class. Saying that, he sat down and was about to start the class. At this moment, a young girl suddenly stood up. She held an ancient book in her hand and looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I am Xia He from Huaxia Academy. I have something to ask young Master Yi. Huaxia Academy. Yi Xian smiled. Speak. Xia He looked straight at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, as far as I know, this divine Tao code was written by our academy's Dean Qingguan, right? Yi Xian nodded. Xia He nodded slightly. Since that's the case, then shouldn't young Master Yi use this book for his own benefit? Hearing this, Xiaolan's expression instantly changed. He knew the relationship between Yi Xian and Qingguan. Young Master Yi had an extremely good relationship with the pavilion master. He was about to stop her, but Yi Xian stopped him. Yi Xian looked at Xia He and smiled. You think I shouldn't? Xia He nodded. Dean Yi, I think you shouldn't. What you're doing is disrespecting my dean and my Huaxia Academy. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Do you know how I got this book? Xia He looked straight at Yi Xian. I don't know. Yi Xian grinned. If you don't know, then you're talking nonsense here. Also, you said I don't respect Qingguan and Huaxia Academy. Saying that, he smiled. Do you know that this book was given to me by Qingguan? Xia He frowned slightly. What proof do you have? If you don't have proof that it was given by the dean, then you're a robber, a bandit. Qi. A sword pierced Xia He's forehead. Boom. In an instant, Xia He's body trembled violently. She was directly nailed to the spot. Everyone was shocked. Proof. Yi Xian got up and looked at Xia He. Who do you think you are? Chapter 23:45. Everyone in the surroundings was shocked. They didn't expect Yi Xian to suddenly make a move. The woman stared at Yi Xian. What? A dignified dean only knows how to use force to convince others? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. I'm not asking you to submit. I just feel that on what basis are you questioning me? Moreover, you think you're representing Qingguan. On what basis do you think you can represent Qingguan? Although there was a sword in her head, the woman wasn't afraid at all. I'm from Huaxia Academy. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled, and then? The woman stared at Yi Xian. Your divine Tao code was written by Dean Qin, so it should belong to my Huaxia Academy. Xiaolan suddenly said angrily, Bastard, this book was personally given to young Master Yi by the pavilion master. The woman suddenly glared at Xiaolan. Don't talk to me, you subservient slave. To think that you're a president, yet you don't have any backbone at all. You keep calling young Master Yi this and young Master Yi that. Where's your backbone? Where's your dignity? Do you think he'll give you any benefits if you curry favor with him? Can't you have some backbone? Xiaolan looked at the woman, not angry, and his expression was very calm. He had finally realized. This woman was an idiot. She had read too many books. Xiaolan sighed in his heart. This young Master Yi was also a scholar, but his ability to conduct himself was not just a little bit better than this woman. Yi Xian smiled. This book was indeed given to me by Qin Guan. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Even if the dean gave it to you, what right do you have to use this book to give a speech for profit? What right do you have? You. Yi Xian suddenly slapped her. Bang! The woman's body was directly shattered. Everyone, Yi Xian looked at the woman who only had a soul left and smiled. What does it have to do with you that I'm going to give a speech? The woman glared at Yi Xian. Shameless, shameless. Yi Xian shook his head. There really are all sorts of weirdos in the boundless world. As he spoke, he prepared to attack. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the distant horizon. Dean Yi, please show mercy. An old man appeared not too far away from Yi Xian as soon as he finished speaking. He was one of the deputy deans of Huaxia Academy, Zhao Ruo. Apart from Qin Guan, the Huaxia Academy's dean, there were 3 other deputy deans. After landing, Zhao Ruo immediately bowed deeply. Young Master Yi, my student's words have offended young Master Yi. I apologize to young Master Yi on her behalf. Yi Xian smiled and said, your student? Personal disciple? Zhao Ruo hurriedly nodded, yes. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Why did you accept such an idiot as your student? As soon as these words were spoken, Zhao Ruo's expression instantly turned ugly. He wasn't going to give him any face. In the distance, the woman suddenly ridiculed. Do you think I'm afraid of death? Even if one of me dies, there will still be thousands of me. F***ck. At the side, Xiaolan was dumbfounded as he looked at the woman. His eyes were filled with disbelief. What kind of woman was this? Those who were listening to the lecture were also shocked at this moment. What the hell was this? Yi Xian looked at the woman in disbelief. How on earth did you read this book? Zhao Ruo hurriedly said, young Master Yi, she grew up in the academy and rarely went out to gain experience, so, Yi Xian suddenly interrupted Zhao Ruo, so you read it as retarded. Am I right? Zhao Ruo's expression turned ugly. Young Master Yi, please speak in a civilized manner. You and I are both scholars. Yi Xian shook his head. In the distance, the woman still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly flicked his sleeves. Boom! The woman's soul was directly erased. She was killed. Zhao Ruo was stunned, then said angrily, young Master Yi, you've gone too far in this matter. You, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. Bang! Zhao Ruo's body directly shattered, leaving only her soul. At the same time, a sword was directly pressed against Zhao Ruo's forehead. Zhao Ruo was stunned. Yi Xian smiled and said, Deputy Dean Zhao Ruo, do you know what your disciple just said? Zhao Ruo stared at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, no matter what she said, isn't it freedom of speech? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Freedom of speech means you can viciously attack others? Zhao Ruo looked straight at Yi Xian. She's wrong, but she doesn't deserve to die. Yi Xian smiled and said, why shouldn't she deserve to die? She targeted me, so I feel that she deserves to die. So, she must die. She's not my woman, why should I spoil her? Zhao Ruo still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly flipped his palm. Bang! The sword between Zhao Ruo's eyebrows directly entered his soul. Right when Zhao Ruo was about to be completely obliterated, a furious shout suddenly resounded from the distant horizon, "Stop!" As soon as the voice resounded, an old man suddenly appeared in the distant horizon, and in the next moment, the old man appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. Xiaolan, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke abruptly, "The guardian of the Huaxia Academy, an ancient god realm expert." Ancient god realm expert. Yi Xian smiled and didn't speak. Meanwhile, the old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You know me?" The old man nodded. "Young Master Yi is a friend of the Pavilion Master." Yi Xian nodded. "In that case, you should know that this divine Tao code was given to me by Qin Guan, right?" The old man nodded slightly, "Yes." Yi Xian looked the old man in the eyes. "Since it was given to me by Qin Guan, then this divine Tao code is mine. Since it's mine, then my speech doesn't seem to have anything to do with the academy, right?" The old man hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, I'm not here to blame young Master Yi. I'm here to ask young Master Yi to show mercy." As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, "Out of respect for Pavilion Master Qin." Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't want to give that face to you today." The old man was stunned. Yi Xian pointed at Zhao Ruo, who stood in the distance. "Now, I'm going to kill him. If you dare to attack, then I'll kill you as well." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and then a ray of light suddenly shot forward. It was aimed at Zhao Ruo. The old man's expression instantly changed violently when he witnessed this scene. He didn't hesitate to stand in front of Zhao Ruo and smash his fist forward. Bang! The ray of light shattered. Yi Xian looked at the old man, and the old man hurriedly said, "Yi." Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. The deity appeared in his hand, and he waved it. Chi! The tip of a brush slashed out. He couldn't be compared to before. When he activated the deity now, its power was many times stronger than before. After all, he was an ancient god realm expert. The old man's expression changed drastically when he saw the tip of the brush coming at him, and he quickly blocked it with both hands. Chi! Before everyone's eyes, the tip of the brush pierced through the old man's body. Bang! His body shattered, and his soul dissipated swiftly. Everyone was stunned. An ancient god realm expert was killed just like that? Zhao Ruo suddenly opened her palm, and in the next moment, a token soared into the sky. Bang! In the depths of the starry sky, a ray of starlight suddenly appeared, and in the next moment, a figure appeared within that ray of starlight. He called for help. Zhao Ruo stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Let's see how you're going to explain this to the dean." Yi Xian shrugged. "Even Qin Guan can't protect you today." Right at this time, Qin Guan appeared from the ray of starlight. Qin Guan was at the foot of a mountain. She still had short hair, and she was wearing a short-sleeved long dress that was incompatible with this world. The small pouch hanging from her waist was still as eye-catching as ever. Seeing Qin Guan, Zhao Ruo, and the old man who was about to disappear hastily saluted respectfully. Xiaolan also gave a deep bow. Qin Guan suddenly smiled. "What is it?" Zhao Ruo hastily recounted Yi Xian's crimes. Gradually, Qin Guan's brows furrowed into a frown. When Wenxiu finished, Qin Guan suddenly said, "You're adding oil to the fire. Am I right?" Zhao Ruo's expression froze. Qin Guan shook her head. "Although young Master Yi is usually a bit flashy, he's not someone who likes to indiscriminately kill the innocent. Moreover, from what you said, you kept blaming young Master Yi, but you didn't mention your own problems. You didn't mention why the disciple you accepted angered young Master Yi. You also didn't mention why the conflict between you and young Master Yi escalated. You also didn't mention. Do you think I'm stupid and easy to fool?" Hearing this, Zhao Ruo's face instantly turned pale. She directly knelt down and said with a trembling voice, "Dean, I absolutely didn't mean that." At the side, Xiaolan suddenly spoke up. He recounted everything that had happened in all honesty. After Qin Guan listened, she immediately shook her head, that the Divine Tao Codex was given to young Master Yi by me. Since I gave it to him, then it's his. How he wants to use it is naturally his own business. Why does he need to get your approval? Saying that, she looked at the old man whose soul was about to disappear. In this matter, you're innocent. You don't deserve to die. After saying that, she opened her palm. A black light suddenly pierced through the galaxy and arrived in front of the old man. In the next moment, this black light directly entered the old man's soul that was about to disappear. Bang! After this black light entered, the old man's soul instantly calmed down. Qin Guan turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled, angry? Yi Xian nodded, I just feel that. Why do you need them to meddle in the matter between me and you? Who do they think they are? Qin Guan nodded slightly. She looked at Zhao Rua, he's right. Why do you need to meddle in the matter between me and him? Don't you know that I'm friends with young Master Yi? Zhao Rua said with a trembling voice, I know. Qin Guan frowned slightly, if you know, then why do you still want to find trouble with him? Your student was in the wrong from the start. Since he was in the wrong, why didn't you sincerely apologize after you came? Moreover, your student made mistakes again and again, why didn't you restrain him? After saying that, she narrowed her eyes, no, you're not that stupid. You're purposely provoking young Master Yi, wanting him to kill the Celestial Treasure Pavilion student, and then making him enemies with me and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Hearing this, Yi Xian also frowned. Qin Guan suddenly scolded, how dare you, you. At this moment, Zhao Rua's body suddenly burst into flames. In the next moment, she directly turned into nothingness. Silencing her. Impudent. Qin Guan suddenly raged, how dare you plot against me, Motherf asterisk Ker. After saying that, she suddenly stopped and blinked her eyes, blushing slightly, lady. I want to be a lady. I can't use vulgar language. Everyone. Chapter 2346. A lady. At the scene, everyone's expression was extremely strange. At the side, Yi Xian's brows were tightly knitted. He also felt that this matter was a bit strange. Logically speaking, the person chosen by Qin Guan would definitely not be so retarded, but this Zhao Rua was very abnormal. Something was wrong. At this moment, Qin Guan suddenly said, someone come. As the voice fell, an old man in a black robe suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian and Yi Xian. Ancient God Realm. Qin Guan was about to speak, but at this moment, the mountain behind her suddenly trembled. Qin Guan immediately turned her head, and a moment later, her eyes flashed with excitement. She was about to go up, but at this moment, she seemed to have thought of something and stopped, then turned to look at the old man in a black robe. From now on, everyone in the East Faction Guards will listen to young Master Ye's command and thoroughly investigate this matter. The old man in a black robe bowed deeply, understood. Qin Guan looked at Yi Xian, someone actually dared to plot against us. Their background is not small, you must be careful. Yi Xian hurriedly said, what about you? Qin Guan blinked, I have something to do. When I'm done, I will look for you. Be careful. After saying that, she directly turned around and disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian was completely speechless. This woman couldn't have gone to archaeology again, right? Of course, he had more important matters to deal with now. Who was framing me and Qin Guan? They even dared to target Qin Guan. Yi Xian thought for a moment, but still could not think of who it was. At this moment, the old man in a black robe suddenly said, young Master Yi, I will go investigate first. If there is any news, I will report to you. Yi Xian looked at the old man in a black robe, how should I address senior? The old man in a black robe hurriedly said, I dare not call you senior, young Master Yi can call me Fu Yi. Yi Xian nodded, Fu Yi, are you from the East Faction Guards? The old man in a black robe nodded slightly, yes. Yi Xian was curious. What is this East Faction Guards? Fu Yi said, it's a secret organization established by the Pavilion Master. There are about 36 members in the various worlds and universes. Our mission is to monitor all the presidents of the Celestial Treasure Pavilions and see if they are corrupt. Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard that. This Qin Guan is a bit fierce. However, this was normal. After all, Qin Guan didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. It was impossible for her to manage all the branches. If she didn't manage them for a long time, some people might start to cause trouble. It was good to have someone supervising him. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian asked again, what are the realms of the 36 people? Fu Yi said, Ancient God Realm. 36 Ancient God Realm experts. Yi Xian gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. 36 Ancient God Realm experts. It had to be said that Yi Xian was still a bit shocked. How many more secrets did this rich woman have? Fu Yi said again, Young Master, the other party dared to target you and the Pavilion Master. Their background is definitely not small. I have already contacted the 2 East Faction guards nearby. They will be here in half a day. Please be careful. Yi Xian nodded, I understand. Fu Yi bowed slightly and quietly retreated. Yi Xian frowned. Who was it? Could it be the Qin clan and the Zhu clan from before? Did the other party have such terrifying strength? Yi Xian fell into deep thought. After a moment, Yi Xian collected his thoughts. He looked at the crowd below and smiled, continue the lesson. As he spoke, he sat down, and the others in the surroundings sat down as well. Yi Xian continued the lesson. This time, he was talking about Dao techniques. As Yi Xian started the lesson, the crowd became excited again. 1,000 universe veins? It was totally worth it. At the side, Xiaolan quietly retreated and immediately began to recall all the experts of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. He knew that something big was about to happen. Somewhere in the starry sky, a young man wearing a mask stood quietly. Behind him was the Qin clan's patriarch, Qin Gu, and the Zhu clan's patriarch, Zhuan. The young man chuckled, failed. As he said that, the corners of his mouth curled up. I have to say, this Qin Guan Pavilion Master is really an extraordinary person. Behind him, Zhuan said in a deep voice, compared to 9th Young Master, she is not an extraordinary person. The young man shook his head, not at all. In terms of personal strength, I am far inferior to this woman. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion that this woman founded has spread throughout the universe. Its wealth, no force in the universe can compare to it. Zhuan glanced at the 9th Young Master and did not say anything. The 9th Young Master suddenly smiled, and this Yi Xian actually has Dedeabi. Although it is only a clone, I have to say that this still shocked my clan. My clan. When they heard these 2 words, Zhuan and Qin Gu's expressions changed slightly, and their bodies could not help but bend a little. The 9th Young Master said again, the 2 of you do not act rashly for now. Wait for my orders. As he was about to leave, a black-robed old man suddenly appeared not far away. The person who came was Fu Yi. Seeing Fu Yi, the 9th Young Master was slightly stunned, and then he laughed. What a good Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Your intelligence network is really terrifying. You actually found this place so quickly. This young master is convinced. Fu Yi looked at the 9th Young Master. Without any nonsense, he was about to make a move, but at this moment, the 9th Young Master suddenly flicked his sleeve. Fu Yi's eyes narrowed, and he punched out. Rumble. In an instant, a terrifying force suddenly swept out from the battlefield. Immediately after, Fu Yi retreated several thousand zhang away. At this moment, Fu Yi and the other 2's bodies were completely illusory. Before they completely disappeared, the 9th Young Master smiled. This Celestial Treasure Pavilion and the Dedeabi on Yi Xian, I want it. Fu Yi shook his head. How laughable. The ninth young master roared with laughter. The world is afraid of your celestial treasure pavilion, but I'm not. Let's wait and see. As soon as he finished speaking, the three of them vanished on the spot. After a moment of silence, Fu Yi turned around and vanished on the spot. In the starry sky. After the ninth young master brought Qin Gu and Zhuan to a stop, he glanced at them. Don't act rashly for now. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished into the distance. Zhuan spoke in a low voice. Our target is only Yi Xian, but the ninth young master's target is the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. A wisp of fear flashed through his eyes when he spoke up to this point. Qin Gu shook his head and sighed. I know that the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is powerful, and we can't afford to offend it. However, you also know that Yi Xian is an extremely distinguished guest of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Why did he dare to be so arrogant all along the way? Isn't it because of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion behind him? With the Celestial Treasure Pavilion supporting him, our two clans can't do anything to him. Zhuan fell silent. The reason they hadn't chosen to act earlier was because they'd noticed that Yi Xian was actually on the same side as the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. They naturally didn't dare act while the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was supporting Yi Xian. Fortunately, the sudden appearance of the ninth young master had given them hope. They didn't know how terrifying the ninth young master's clan was. All they knew was that the ninth young master actually had 9 ancient god realm experts protecting him. Ancient god realm experts as his bodyguards? It was obvious how terrifying the ninth young master's clan was. So, they decided to make a bet. If they won, then not only would they be able to take revenge, they'd even be able to ride on the ninth young master's coattails. It was simply a huge profit. Meanwhile, Qin Gu spoke abruptly. We can rope in more experts. Zhuan looked at Qin Gu. Who? The corners of Qin Gu's mouth curled up slightly. Profound God Dimensions Xian Tian. Doesn't he have enmity with Yi Xian and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Let's rope him in. He'll definitely be very willing to fight Yi Xian and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion with us. Zhuan nodded. Indeed. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them vanished on the spot. Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Lecture Hall. At this moment, the lecture had ended, and Yi Xian had harvested a total of 30 million universe veins. In addition to the 30 million universe veins from before, he had harvested 60 million universe veins. 60 million universe veins. Needless to say, it was still very profitable. However, when he thought of Guanxian Academy, his sword skills, and his cultivation, he felt a headache. It was still too little. He needed too much money. Yi Xian suddenly sighed softly. He should have borrowed some money from Qin Guan previously. Actually, he'd wanted to ask before, but he felt that it wasn't good. He couldn't trouble Qin Guan for everything. It was already very benevolent of him to gift him that divine Dao code. If he were to look for someone else, it wasn't his own wife. After all, it wasn't good. At this moment, Fu Yi suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Fu Yi. Have you found anything? Fu Yi said in a deep voice, only the Qin clan and the Gu clan. However, there was someone behind them, a man wearing a mask. This person's identity has not been found yet. Qin clan and the Gu clan. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, how strong is the masked man? Fu Yi said solemnly, very strong. I shouldn't be able to defeat him. Yi Xian sighed softly. He knew that he wouldn't be able to stay cool for more than 3 days. Now, an expert above the ancient god realm had appeared. This was a bit of a pain in the ass. At this moment, Fu Yi said, young Master Yi, we are already doing our best to investigate. During this period, you must be careful, because I'm afraid that the other party will attack you. Yi Xian nodded, thank you. Fu Yi said, young master is too polite. This time, the other party's background shouldn't be small. I've already sent more Divine Guard brothers over. Right now, we are in a passive position. If we really can't find out the other party's background, I'm afraid we can only wait for the pavilion master to come. Yi Xian smiled slightly. You guys also have to be careful. Try not to leave this celestial treasure pavilion. Fu Yi bowed slightly. Understood. Yi Xian kept the storage ring and said, I'm going back to cultivate. You guys continue with your work. After saying that, he turned and left. Profound God world. In the main hall, Xian Tian sat on a chair as if he had lost his soul. These days, he hadn't had a good time. First, he was scared by the green-robed man, then he was tricked by the celestial treasure pavilion. During this period of time, he was about to go crazy. Especially that green-robed man, he was simply a nightmare that he couldn't get rid of. At this moment, an old man appeared in the hall. The old man bowed slightly. Realm Lord, the Qin clan's patriarch and the Zhu clan's patriarch request an audience. Xian Tian frowned slightly. What are they here for? The old man said in a low voice, they said they have important matters. After a moment of silence, Xian Tian said, let them in. The old man bowed slightly and retreated. Soon, Zhuan and Qin Gu walked into the hall. Zhuan cupped his fists. Realm Lord Xian Tian, this time, we are here to invite you to work with us on a big matter. Xian Tian was slightly curious. What big matter? Zhuan looked straight at Xian Tian. Kill Yi Xian. Hearing that, Xian Tian's legs suddenly weakened, and he almost knelt down. Chapter 2347. Kill Yi Xian? Xian Tian thought he heard wrong, and he asked hurriedly, Kill Yi Xian? Zhuan nodded, yes. Not only will I kill Yi Xian, but I'll destroy the celestial treasure pavilion as well. Xian Tian fell silent. Zhuan wanted to say something, but Xian Tian suddenly said, let me think about it. Zhuan was slightly stunned, and then he said, think about it? Xian Tian nodded, and then he turned around and left. Zhuan and Qin Gu glanced at each other, and they were slightly dazed. Xian Tian went straight to the celestial treasure pavilion after he left. Xian Tian cupped his fists towards Xiaolan at the entrance of the pavilion. President Xiao, please notify young Master Yi that I have something to report to him, something extremely important. Xiaolan glanced at Xian Tian, and then he turned around and left. A short while later, Xiaolan stopped before Xian Tian. Go in. Xiaolan hurriedly said, thank you. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Xian Tian arrived before Yi Xian, and he bowed deeply to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I want to make a report. Yi Xian looked at Xian Tian with slight surprise. Report? Xian Tian nodded, and then he hurriedly told him about the Qin clan and Zhu clan. As soon as he finished speaking, Xian Tian looked carefully at Yi Xian, and he was quite perturbed at this moment. Yi Xian fell silent for a short while, and then he looked at Xian Tian. Why didn't you agree to them? Xian Tian's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. Yi Xian smiled. You don't have to be so nervous. Actually, you could have agreed to them. Xian Tian was stunned, and then he hesitated for a moment before he said, Young Master Yi wants me to be a spy. Yi Xian nodded. Xian Tian immediately said, understood. As soon as he spoke, he left silently. Yi Xian said softly, the Qin clan and the ancient clan. At this moment, two old men suddenly appeared on the scene. The two old men bowed slightly to Yi Xian, and then disappeared quietly. The Eastern Depot Divine Guards. These two people were hidden in the dark, protecting his safety at all times. At this moment, the Celestial Treasure City was on high alert, and the experts from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion had rushed back. Xiaolan and Fu Yi were still worried. Since the other party dared to target Yi Xian and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, they must be very powerful. They had to be careful. In the starry sky, Yi Xian suddenly stood up and walked out. Xiaolan and Fu Yi were standing guard outside. Yi Xian glanced at them, and then he smiled. Get ready, we're going to the Qin clan. Both Fu Yi and Fu Yi were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian had already walked into the distance. Fu Yi hesitated for a moment before saying, Young Master Yi, we should wait here for the pavilion master to arrive. As far as he was concerned, the current situation should be dealt with after Qin Guan arrived because he didn't know what sort of power was targeting the Celestial Treasure Pavilion and Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned to look at Fu Yi and smiled, I don't like to be passive. I like to take the initiative. Fu Yi hesitated to speak. Yi Xian smiled, why do I feel like all of you don't really listen to Qin Guan? Isn't Qin Guan too benevolent? Fu Yi's expression changed drastically when he heard this, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully, Young Master Yi, please don't be angry. I was wrong. He naturally understood what Yi Xian meant. Qin Guan had said before he left that he would listen to Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, don't be nervous, I'm just saying. Now, bring all the ancient God realm experts and leave with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished into the horizon. Fu Yi didn't hesitate any longer, and he immediately led all the ancient God realm experts that were hiding in the dark and vanished into the horizon. Qin clan. Qin clan. They'd established a world by themselves, and it was called the Qin world. In the current universe, the Qin clan could be considered to be a large clan because they had ancient God realm experts. Yi Xian and Fu Yi had just arrived at the Qin clan when a few dozen powerful auras assaulted them. The ancient God realm. Yi Xian waved his right hand lightly, and then a ray of sword light flew out and instantly swept through the sky. At this moment, the entire sky was obliterated by this ray of sword light. Hiss. A few dozen auras were instantly obliterated. At the same time, a few dozen shrill cries resounded from afar, and then a few dozen bloody heads slowly floated down from the sky. It was an extremely bloody scene. Fu Yi took a deep glance at Yi Xian when he witnessed this scene, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. Yi Xian's strength had slightly exceeded his expectations. Meanwhile, the Qin clan's patriarch, Qin Gu, suddenly appeared before Yi Xian and the others. Qin Gu gazed at Yi Xian and was about to speak when a sword suddenly appeared in front of him. Qin Gu's pupils constricted, and he roared furiously as he raised his arms to block. Bang! Qin Gu was blasted back, and then another sword arrived. Qin Gu was horrified in his heart. He suddenly clenched his right hand into a fist, and then he suddenly smashed it forward. Rumble. A strand of terrifying energy erupted like a volcano that had been accumulating for 10,000 years, and the space and the surroundings warped at this moment. Bang! The ray of sword light shattered, and Qin Gu retreated explosively once more. However, another sword arrived. One strike followed the other. Qin Gu's pupils instantly constricted to the size of needles when he saw this attack. Bang! Along with the explosion of the ray of sword light, Qin Gu retreated 30 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, his body split apart, and blood sprayed out. But right at this moment, another sword arrived. Qin Gu suddenly roared furiously. He opened his palm, and an enormous golden shield appeared before him. Rumble. Qin Gu and the shield were blasted 30 kilometers away. As soon as Qin Gu stopped moving, he hurriedly said, I have something to say. Hiss. A ray of sword light suddenly pierced through the space in front of him and slashed straight towards his face. Qin Gu's pupils constricted, and he used the shield to block before him once more. Bang! The shield shattered, and Qin Gu was blasted flying once more. This time, his body was blasted apart at the instant he was blasted flying. At the instant his body was blasted apart, a sword suddenly pierced through the space between his brows and nailed him on the spot. The surroundings fell silent. Fu Yi took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and he was shocked to the extreme. This young Master Ye's strength is simply terrifying. Qin Gu spoke with a trembling voice, you. He hadn't finished speaking when a sword suddenly pierced through his throat, and it caused his voice to stop abruptly. Yi Xian gazed at Qin Gu and shook his head. I don't like listening to your nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and Sword Zong suddenly appeared in his grasp. In the next moment, Sword Zong trembled violently, and then a ray of blood-red light appeared. In an instant, a monstrous aura and killing intent swept out. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed. Qin Gu gazed at Yi Xian while his eyes were filled with astonishment. He wanted to speak, but he was unable to say a word. Meanwhile, Yi Xian flicked his sleeve. Sword Zong carried an expanse of blood-red energy as it swept down from the sky. In the next moment, Sword Zong entered the Qin clan. Rumble. A sea of blood suddenly erupted from beneath the Qin clan, and in an instant, countless shrill cries resounded. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Fu Yi and the others instantly changed. This young Master Yi actually wanted to annihilate their clan. On the other side, Qin Gu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as his body trembled violently. In next to no time, the entire Qin world started to shatter into pieces. Not only was his race exterminated, but he was also going to destroy his realm. Below, Zhang Jian went berserk, madly absorbing the blood qi. After a moment, Yi Xian looked at Qin Gu. He opened his palm and the Zhangjian sword appeared in his hand. At this moment, the Zhangjian sword looked as if it was made of fresh blood. It was a terrifying red. Yi Xian suddenly said, let's go. With that, he turned around and left. Fu Yi suddenly said, young Master Yi, are we not going to kill this Qin Gu? Yi Xian stopped. He turned around to look at Qin Gu and smiled. Do you know why I didn't kill you? Qin Gu looked at Yi Xian with hatred, but his heart was relieved. As long as he didn't die, he would have a chance. Yi Xian laughed, I'm just teasing you. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword pierced through the space between Qin Gu's eyebrows. Yi Xian turned around and left. Behind him, Qin Gu's soul was fading away bit by bit. Yi Xian didn't directly erase him. Instead, he let him die slowly. Let him experience the feeling of the arrival of death. Behind him, Qin Gu roared madly. At this moment, a white light suddenly enveloped Qin Gu. In the next moment, Qin Gu, whose soul was about to disappear, was forcefully protected by this white light. Yi Xian and the others stopped. Yi Xian turned around and saw a masked man standing not far away from him. Ninth Young Master. And behind this ninth young master, there were 12 ancient god realm experts. Seeing this scene, Fu Yi's expression changed drastically. Ninth young master looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi, it's not good to exterminate an entire clan at the drop of a hat. After all, killing too many people will cause a backlash. Yi Xian smiled. You're the person behind them? Ninth young master nodded. Yes. Yi Xian sized up ninth young master, and then he shook his head. How ugly. Everyone was speechless. Qin Gu suddenly roared furiously. Yi Xian. You annihilated my Qin clan. You. Ninth young master suddenly smiled. Patriarch Qin Gu, don't be angry. He annihilated your Qin clan, so annihilate his entire clan. Yi Xian sized up ninth young master and smiled. Annihilate my entire clan? Ninth young master chuckled. What? Is it very difficult? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, if you want to annihilate me alone, then I think you have a chance. But if you want to annihilate my entire clan, I'm afraid it's quite difficult. Ninth young master grinned. Difficult? Ha. Young Master Yi, I can tell you responsibly that it's not difficult at all. Yi Xian immediately gave him a thumbs up, and said seriously, I respect you for being a man. Ninth young master chuckled, then he opened his fan and waved it lightly. Why? Do you think I don't have the ability? Yi Xian nodded. Ninth young master laughed. Young master Yi, since I dare to go against Immortal Treasure Pavilion, then it proves that I'm not afraid of Immortal Treasure Pavilion at all. Since I'm not even afraid of Immortal Treasure Pavilion, why would I be afraid of you? As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Young master Yi, have you heard of the story of a frog at the bottom of a well? Yi Xian glanced at ninth young master, and didn't speak. Ninth young master continued. A frog at the bottom of a well thinks that the sky is only as big as the mouth of the well. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Of course it's ridiculous, because it's at the bottom of the well. As he spoke, the corner of his mouth raised slightly. Young master Yi, do you think you're that frog? Yi Xian glanced at the 2 storage rings on ninth young master's hand. He didn't speak, and no one knew what he was thinking. Recently, I've been a little poor. P.S. Yesterday, I drank 2 cups of wine. I suddenly thought, what would happen if I were to drink more? Thus, I wanted to give it a try today. But after thinking about it, I admit, I'm a little scared. Chapter 23:48. Just as the ninth young master was about to say something, Yi Xian suddenly made his move. The sword arrived. It was an extremely fast sword strike. When Yi Xian made his move, the ninth young master narrowed his eyes. His expression was as calm as still water, as if he had expected it. He suddenly took out a folding fan and lightly blocked the attack. On the folding fan, a white light suddenly gushed out. Boom! The sword light shattered, but the ninth young master did not retreat even half a step. Seeing this scene, a trace of surprise flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. He glanced at the folding fan in the ninth young master's hand and did not speak. The ninth young master glanced at the sword in Yi Xian's hand and chuckled, Swordsman. Yi Xian smiled faintly, yes. Saying that, he suddenly waved his brush. The tip of the brush slashed out. In the distance, the ninth young master narrowed his eyes and suddenly opened his folding fan. In the next moment, a white light gushed out from the folding fan. Rumble. Under everyone's gaze, the ninth young master was directly blasted tens of thousands of feet away. When he stopped, the star field of millions of miles behind him was directly erased. However, he was fine. The folding fan in the ninth young master's hand cracked, but he was unharmed. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He looked at Dedeabi. Dedeabi hurriedly said, "It has nothing to do with me. It's you, young Master Yi, who couldn't display my full power. I won't take the blame." Yi Xian, Dedeabi. In the distance, the ninth young master's eyes flickered with excitement, as expected of Dedeabi. A stroke of his brush is actually this strong. Unfortunately, your realm is too low and your soul is too weak. You can't display its true power. If it was in my hands. Saying this, a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. At this time, Yi Xian waved his brush again. A stroke of the brush flashed across the field. In the distance, the ninth young master pointed his fan forward. Rumble. The ninth young master's fan was sent flying as soon as it came into contact with the brush. It flew for tens of thousands of feet. When he stopped, a sword light slashed at him. The ninth young master narrowed his eyes and suddenly opened his fan. A white light suddenly flew out. Rumble. Ninth young master retreated again. And when Yi Xian was about to attack again, the distant ninth young master suddenly opened his palm. In the next instant, a bag suddenly flew into the sky, and the bag directly opened and aimed at the distant Yi Xian. Boom! A gust of horrifying chilly wind suddenly swept out and headed straight for Yi Xian. Everywhere the powerful chilly wind passed, time and space were forcefully erased, and it was extremely shocking. In the distance, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He opened his palm, and then sword burial suddenly slashed out. An expanse of blood-red light tore through the surroundings. Wherever the sword light passed, it swept through everything. It was unparalleled. Boom! Sword burial brought with it an expanse of blood-red light as it forcefully blocked the terrifying cold wind. At this time, the distant ninth young master suddenly opened his palm, and a huge colorful wheel appeared in his hand. The edge of the wheel was as sharp as a blade. When the ninth young master activated the wheel, the entire wheel suddenly trembled violently, and then it transformed into a white light that tore through the surroundings. Hiss! With this tearing, a sharp tearing sound suddenly resounded throughout the universe's star fields, causing countless people to tremble in fear. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the wheel that was slashing towards him, and he frowned slightly. He looked at sword burial. Sword burial had been held up by the cold wind, and he had already used a Daobi twice. Using it again would consume a great deal of energy. Without thinking too much about it, Yi Xian suddenly took a step forward. Because as soon as he took that step, thousands of swords condensed from sword intent suddenly surged out of his body. But in the blink of an eye, the thousands of swords merged into a single sword. Yi Xian stretched out his hand, grabbed the sword, and stabbed it forward. Bang! Yi Xian's sword stabbed directly onto the wheel, and the wheel and sword trembled violently. In the next moment, the wheel started to crack apart bit by bit. On the other hand, not only did Yi Xian's sword not dissipate, it grew stronger and stronger instead. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly exerted force with his right hand, and a strand of terrifying force surged out from his arm. Rumble. The wheel directly exploded and then disappeared. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. He glanced at the sword in his hand and felt slightly surprised. He noticed that his mortal energy and sword intent seemed to have become much stronger. What's going on? Meanwhile, the distant ninth young master suddenly spoke in a low voice. What sword intent is that? Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts, looked at the ninth young master, and smiled. It's the mortal sword intent that I created myself. The ninth young master chuckled lightly. Do you think I would believe that? Yi Xian was stunned. The ninth young master gazed at Yi Xian and said, such sword intent possesses formidable energy of faith. Moreover, it contains the grand Tao of the mortal world. How could you possibly have created such sword intent at such a young age? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I relied on my father to comprehend it. The ninth young master grinned, that's right. There's nothing shameful about relying on your family. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the ninth young master suddenly opened his palm, and a blue gourd appeared there. He chanted silently, and it didn't take long for the blue gourd to suddenly fly up slowly. In the next moment, a torrent of energy suddenly surged out from within the gourd. It wasn't an ordinary torrent of energy, it was a torrent of time. Moreover, it wasn't a torrent of time from this era, it was from the ancient times. At the instant that this torrent of time appeared, the expressions of all the ancient god realm experts in the surroundings changed violently, and they retreated explosively and distanced themselves from Yi Xian and the ninth young master. Strands of ancient aura surged towards the surroundings like waves. Yi Xian closed his eyes slightly when he saw the torrent of energy assault him. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, and in the next moment, his eyes had become an ocean of blood. At the same time, the sword of burial suddenly erupted with a strand of terrifying force. Bang! The gust of cold wind was instantly obliterated. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the sword of burial appeared in his grasp. In the next moment, he charged forward and slashed with his sword. Hiss! The ancient torrent of time was directly slashed into pieces by a single strike of Yi Xian's sword. At the same time, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above the ninth young master, and his sword slashed down in a straight line. The ninth young master's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly opened the folding fan in his hand and waved it up. Bang! A ray of white light shot into the sky from within the folding fan. In an instant, both of them retreated explosively, and sword after sword slashed towards the ninth young master while they retreated. The ninth young master's expression was calm as he repeatedly blocked with his folding fan. Even though he was retreating, he'd actually blocked all of Yi Xian's attacks. Yi Xian glanced at the folding fan in the ninth young master's hand, and he was slightly surprised. That fan is quite interesting. Meanwhile, the ninth young master suddenly said, I underestimated you a little. Yi Xian gazed at the ninth young master, and the latter was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! A ray of blood-red light slashed directly towards the ninth young master. The ninth young master's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly tapped the folding fan in his right hand forward. The fan trembled violently, and then a strand of terrifying force suddenly surged out. In an instant, the region in an area of over 100 kilometers was instantly obliterated. Rumble. The ninth young master retreated 30 kilometers, and his body had split apart when he finally stopped moving. Blood sprayed from his body. The expressions of the ancient god realm experts that the ninth young master had brought along changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they were about to attack when Fu Yi and the others stopped them. The ninth young master glanced at his own body, and then he looked at Yi Xian, and he started laughing from extreme rage. Good. Very good. You've succeeded in infuriating me. As he spoke, he suddenly pressed his palms together. Bang! In an instant, an enormous vortex suddenly appeared behind the ninth young master, and then an enormous phantom that was almost 3 kilometers tall silently appeared. At the instant that this phantom appeared, a monstrous aura suddenly swept down. At this moment, the expressions of the ancient god realm experts in the distance instantly changed drastically, and they retreated explosively once more and left this part of the starry sky. The pressure it emanated was sufficient to crush them into pieces. Fu Yi and the others looked at the ninth young master with astonishment. The ninth young master was an ancient god realm expert as well, but the strength he revealed at this moment far exceeded the ancient god realm. Fu Yi and the others gazed at Yi Xian with worry. At this moment, they couldn't interfere. In the starry sky, the ninth young master looked down at Yi Xian. His eyes were indifferent, as though he was looking at an ant. Yi Xian's expression was calm as he opened his palm, and the sword burial floated silently in his hand. The ninth young master looked down at Yi Xian. I'll bury you with a single punch. As the sound of his voice faded, he punched downwards. Behind him, the huge illusory figure suddenly punched downwards. With this punch, the Qin world and the surrounding universe started to crumble bit by bit. It was too powerful. The numerous universes weren't able to withstand the strength of this punch at all. In the distance, the expressions of Fu Yi and the others changed drastically once more, and they retreated explosively. This time, they retreated completely out of the Qin world. At this moment, they were extremely shocked in their hearts. Even though they were ancient god realm experts as well, they were really like ants before the phantom's punch. It was truly too terrifying. Everyone retreated explosively and didn't dare to approach this region. Fu Yi and the others were also filled with worry. Would young Master Yi be able to withstand such a terrifying punch? If he couldn't, in the starry sky, Yi Xian looked at the fist sweeping down with a calm expression. The fist was getting closer and closer, and at this moment, he felt a terrifying pressure that could destroy heaven and earth. He had to admit that ordinary ancient god realm experts were really like ants before this punch. Yi Xian was also a little shocked. They were both ancient god realm experts, but the gap between them could be so big. Obviously, there were a lot of fake ancient god realm experts. The fist was getting closer and closer. As for Yi Xian, his expression was still as calm as ever. Finally, the fist directly hit Yi Xian's head. But Yi Xian actually didn't dodge or counterattack. Rumble. In an instant, a terrifying force erupted from where Yi Xian stood, and a wave of air swept out for millions of miles. The entire Qin world was instantly erased from the universe. However, nothing happened to Yi Xian at all. In the starry sky, the ninth young master looked at Yi Xian with a face full of disbelief. You? How is this possible? Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the ninth young master with a slight frown. Did you not eat? Can't you use more strength? I want to die. The ninth young master. Chapter 23:49. Needless to say, at this moment, ninth young master was completely stunned. He was very clear about the power of his punch, but Yi Xian actually blocked it unscathed. This was absolutely impossible. Ninth young master stared at Yi Xian. What defensive artifact do you have? Yi Xian's expression was calm. I don't have one. Ninth young master said angrily. You do. Yi Xian nodded. I do, and then? Ninth young master was stunned and speechless. Yi Xian looked at ninth young master and asked again. I do, and then? Ninth young master stared at Yi Xian. What artifact do you use? Yi Xian smiled. My father gave me a godly armor. Ninth young master squinted his eyes. What does your father do? Yi Xian said honestly, a swordsman. Ninth young master asked again, what's his name? Yi Xian smiled, green shirt sword master. Ninth young master's eyes flashed with doubt, never heard of him. Yi Xian smiled, anyway, he's very powerful. Ninth young master looked at Yi Xian, how powerful? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, invincible existence. Her. Ninth young master sneered, invincible existence? Don't you think you're ridiculous? Invincible existence. In this vast universe, who dares to say they are invincible? Who can be truly invincible? Even if my clan dominates millions of worlds, I dare not say I'm invincible in the universe. Yi Xian was a little curious. What clan are you from? Ninth young master looked at Yi Xian. Why are you asking this? Yi Xian smiled, curious. Ninth young master chuckled. I think you don't need to know. If your level is not high enough, even if you know some circles, it's meaningless and will only add to your troubles. Yi Xian sighed softly. Why do you have to feel so superior? I feel that a person, no matter how great his achievements are or who is behind him, should maintain a low-key and humble heart. Look at me. My sister, my father, and my big brother are so awesome. Have I ever been proud? Ninth young master's expression was calm. That's because you don't have the capital to be proud. Yi Xian was silent. He suddenly realized that maybe his father was right to let him go. As a free-range child, he grew up at the bottom of the social ladder. He knew the fickleness of human nature, the sufferings of the human world, and knew that life was not easy. If he was by his father's side, he would have been spoiled and fawned upon since he was young. If he grew up in such an environment, he might end up like this ninth young master. Since ancient times, in the secular world, those emperors who founded dynasties were basically all heroes. But after them, there were definitely many muddle-headed and incompetent descendants. Why? Because the descendants of the later generations had never tasted bitterness, had never experienced hardship. It did not mean that those who had tasted hardship would be better than those who had not. It was just that those who had tasted hardship would be more mature and would cherish the life that they had fought for. This ninth young master looked gentle and cultured on the surface, but his words were filled with a sense of superiority that was high and mighty. Just like some rich second generations in the secular world, those who had money would often have a sense of superiority in many situations. Of course, one could not kill them all. Many second generations were also outstanding and hardworking. But in this fickle society, those who thought that they were great just because they had money were still the majority. Ninth young master suddenly smiled and said, I think. Yi Xian shook his head. I wanted to ask about your family. Maybe, you would know my family. But I really don't like your tone. Since it's like this, then let's fight. You and I will fight. If we can't win, then we will fight with our family background. Anyway, in this aspect, I, Yi Xian, have never lost before. As his voice fell, he suddenly held his sword and soared into the sky. Wang! The howl of a sword shook the sky. A vicious expression flashed through the eyes of the ninth young master, and he suddenly bent down and smashed his fist down. The huge phantom behind him smashed its fist down once more. A single punch to destroy the world. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly withdrew his sword and allowed the fist to smash against his head. Rumble. That punch suddenly collapsed, and Yi Xian was completely unscathed. The ninth young master's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and he was about to attack again when a ray of sword energy slashed towards him. The ray of sword energy was like blood. The ninth young master's pupils constricted, and he suddenly wrapped his arms around himself. At the same time, the phantom behind him suddenly pressed its hands together and did the same as him, and it completely surrounded him. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword arrived. Rumble. A ray of blood-red sword energy suddenly exploded from the phantom's arm, and then the phantom trembled violently before it split apart. Meanwhile, Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and over 1,000 swords of blood intent suddenly descended from the sky and slashed at the phantom. Bang! In an instant, the phantom was sliced into countless pieces. At the same time, the ninth young master had retreated over 30 kilometers away, and the distance between them had been completely widened. The ninth young master had just stopped when a sword suddenly slashed towards him, and it was swift like a bolt of lightning. A vicious expression flashed through the ninth young master's eyes, and he suddenly opened his palm to reveal a folding fan. He held the folding fan horizontally to block the attack. Rumble. The folding fan had forcefully blocked Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian didn't attack again. He'd noticed that his sword energy was unable to break through the folding fan. There were cracks on the folding fan, and they were caused by Dedeabi. However, Dedeabi hadn't been able to destroy it completely. Meanwhile, Dedeabi's voice suddenly resounded once more. It has nothing to do with me. You're the one who can't bring forth the full strength of this clone of mine. Yi Xian was speechless. In the distance, the ninth young master stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Only now did he realize that he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. Yi Xian's defense was too monstrous. However, it was also difficult for Yi Xian to kill him. Yi Xian looked at the ninth young master, his right hand gripping the sword in his hand. He was hesitating whether to use instant of invincibility or not, but in the end, he chose not to. Ever since he broke through to the ancient god realm, he had been longing for a battle to his heart's content. His current realm was unstable, and a battle was the best way to help him stabilize his realm. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, revealing the Zhongjin sword in his hand. At this moment, he madly urged the mad demon bloodline in his body. Along with the activation of the mad devil bloodline, the burial sword in his hand suddenly started trembling violently. In next to no time, strands of terrifying evil energy and killing intent swept through the surroundings, and it didn't take long for the starry sky in the surroundings to transform into a sea of blood. In the distance, the ninth young master frowned. This bloodline force of yours is a little interesting. At this time, the Zhongjin sword in Yi Xian's hand shook violently, and a sword intent swept out. Mortal World Sword Intent. When this sword intent appeared, Yi Xian was shocked to discover that it was not blood red. Moreover, this sword intent showed signs of suppressing his bloodline force and the Zhongjin sword. What's going on? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He noticed that his sword intent seemed to be stronger than before. It can grow on its own. At this time, the ninth young master's left hand slowly clenched into a fist, his right hand tightly gripping the fan in his hand. This fan was entirely black in color, made from an unknown material. On the front of the fan was a picture of a ferocious-looking demonic beast, and on the back of the fan was a large golden character, Defense. At this moment, this fan was actually repairing itself. In the distance, Yi Xian collected his thoughts. He looked at the fan in the ninth young master's hand that was slowly repairing itself and frowned. Brother Bai, do you know what this fan is? Dedeabi did not respond. Yi Xian suddenly missed Xiao Ta. After Xiao Ta, when Xiao Ta was around, he was not so bored and lonely. Now, there was no one to talk to. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Qi. A blood-red sword light tore through the battlefield. At the moment when Yi Xian disappeared, the ninth young master's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly opened his fan. On the fan, the ferocious-looking demonic beast suddenly opened its eyes, and then roared, "Ant!" Rumble. This roar caused countless star domains to shatter. Yi Xian was the first to bear the brunt of this roar. He was forced to stop on the spot by this roar, and a terrifying force slammed into him like waves. Rumble. In an instant, Yi Xian's body started to shake violently. One after another dreadful energy kept exploding on his body. The remaining power of the powerful energy instantly spread to the star fields tens of millions of miles away. In an instant, countless star fields were destroyed. However, Yi Xian, who bore the brunt of this attack, was still completely unharmed. The armor he was wearing had forcefully withstood all the force. The ninth young master's face turned extremely unsightly when he saw this. He had never expected that Yi Xian would actually be able to withstand the sole attack of the demonic beast within the fan. Moreover, he was completely unharmed. This is fucking ridiculous. The ninth young master couldn't help but curse. How am I supposed to fight this? In the distance, Yi Xian glanced at himself and couldn't help but say in his heart, "Father. It's my biological father." Needless to say, this armor his father left for him was truly amazing. It would be difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. Not to mention being invincible amongst his peers, even experts 2 realms higher than him couldn't do anything to him. To him, this armor was an invincible existence. In the distance, the ninth young master said fiercely, "What the hell are you wearing? How can you even withstand the sole attack of a heavenly beast?" Yi Xian looked at the fan in the ninth young master's hand. "Heavenly beast? So weak? It's like I haven't eaten." The ninth young master, the heavenly beast within the fan, suddenly roared angrily, "Lowly ant." Following its roar, a terrifying force once again swept out from the fan. Very quickly, the force surged towards Yi Xian like a storm. In the distance, Yi Xian stood motionless with his eyes closed and his hands spread out, allowing the terrifying force to crash into his body. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the endless starry sky, a series of explosions resounded continuously. These explosions could be heard in other universes. However, Yi Xian was still completely unharmed. After a while, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the heavenly beast with the folding fan and raised his middle finger. Trash. Ninth young master was speechless. The heavenly beast. P.S. I've been stuck recently. Everyone, help me think about the plot. If you have any ideas, feel free to leave a comment. I'll see if you can give me some inspiration. Thank you, everyone. 7017K. Chapter 2350. Trash. This sentence undoubtedly infuriated the heavenly beast. The heavenly beast suddenly raised its head and roared. Soul soundwave attacks surged out like waves. The ninth young master was startled, because this power was simply too strong, he couldn't withstand it. In the distance, Yi Xian stood still with a calm expression. He allowed the soul soundwave attacks to hit his body. At this moment, he was like a mountain. No matter how the wind blew, he was as firm as a boulder. A moment later, the heavenly beast was completely dumbfounded. Because it realized that the human before it was completely unharmed. Inside the fan, the heavenly beast stared at Yi Xian in disbelief. How is this possible? The ninth young master fell silent. He was also extremely shocked. Yi Xian's defense was simply invincible. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Now it's my turn. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared from the spot. Qi. A sword ray tore through the battlefield like a bolt of lightning. The ninth young master narrowed his eyes. In the next moment, he disappeared from the spot. Very soon, the two of them started fighting again. Although the ninth young master could not do anything to Yi Xian, he had the fan. Yi Xian could not do anything to him. Of course, he had no intention of killing the ninth young master. He was using him as a practice target. Fight. He needed to fight like crazy. Recently, he had been reading and comprehending books every day. He lacked the experience of fighting. Now, he needed to fight to his heart's content. The more Yi Xian fought, the crazier he became. The more he fought, the stronger he became. This was because the power of his bloodline had been activated. As long as he did not die, his abilities would continue to improve. Most importantly, his human realm sword will and human realm power were also continuously strengthening. Hence, the ninth young master became more and more alarmed as he fought, because he also discovered that Yi Xian before him was getting stronger and stronger. Moreover, the most frustrating thing was that he could not break through Yi Xian's defense. Even when the fan slashed at Yi Xian, it could not break through Yi Xian's defense. However, Yi Xian's sword could break through his defense, so he didn't dare to face Yi Xian's sword head-on. As time went by, the ninth young master gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. On the other side, Fu Yi, who was secretly watching, heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian actually withstood it. It had to be said that they were also very shocked. Yi Xian was actually able to survive in front of such a terrifying power. It was truly terrifying. On the other hand, Qin Gu's expression was extremely ugly. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be such a monster. He knew how terrifying the ninth young master was. But now, Yi Xian could actually suppress the ninth young master. What did this mean? This meant that Yi Xian's background was definitely not ordinary. Thinking of this, Qin Gu sighed softly. Back then, he should not have been the one to stand out. Now, the Qin clan had been destroyed. When he thought of this, Qin Gu's expression gradually became ferocious again. He glanced coldly at the surroundings before retreating silently. In the distance, Yi Xian and the ninth young master were still fighting. The two of them were already in full swing and the battle was extremely intense. About an hour later, following the explosion of sword light, Yi Xian and the ninth young master retreated at the same time. In the process of retreating, Yi Xian suddenly pointed with his fingers. In an instant, over 1,000 intense swords shot out. In the distance, the ninth young master's eyes flashed with a hint of ferocity. He suddenly waved the fan in his right hand, and with this wave, the shadow of a beast suddenly charged out. Rumble. The 1,000 swords that Yi Xian had summoned were directly sent flying. At this time, the two of them had retreated tens of thousands of feet. After stopping, Yi Xian opened his palm and the Zhangjian appeared in his hand. Around him, over 1,000 intense swords floated. Yi Xian's body was like blood, and his entire body was filled with endless killing intent and viciousness. In the distance, after the ninth young master stopped, there were countless sword scars all over his body. His physical body wasn't as strong as Yi Xian's. The ninth young master had fallen into a disadvantageous position in this collision. In the distance, Yi Xian grinned. Again. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack again. However, an enormous teleportation formation suddenly appeared beneath the ninth young master's feet. In the next moment, his figure instantly became ethereal, and he gazed coldly at Yi Xian. Just you wait. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He's leaving just like that? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Countless strands of mortal sword intent gradually appeared around him. At the same time, the bloodline energy within him gradually calmed down, and it wasn't long before he returned to normal. Yi Xian opened his eyes, and his gaze had returned to normal. Yi Xian opened his palm and an intense sword appeared in it. He frowned slightly as he gazed at the intense sword in his hand. He noticed that his mortal sword intent was actually capable of suppressing the bloodline energy and the Zhangjin sword. Moreover, the mortal sword intent was slowly growing stronger. Why was that? Yi Xian was a little puzzled. At this moment, Fu Yi and the rest appeared in front of Yi Xian. Fu Yi solemnly said, "Young Master Yi, they've left." At this moment, he was much more respectful. Previously, he thought that Yi Xian was a second generation, but he didn't expect this young Master Yi to be so terrifying. Yi Xian looked into the depths of the starry sky. "They will return." Fu Yi nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Investigate this person's identity." Fu Yi smiled bitterly, "I've already investigated before, but I couldn't find anything." Yi Xian frowned, "The Celestial Treasure Pavilion couldn't find anything?" Fu Yi solemnly said, "The Pavilion Master can investigate, but we can't, because we don't have the authority to mobilize higher-level intelligence personnel." Yi Xian solemnly said, "Can I?" Fu Yi shook his head, "They only listen to the Pavilion Master's orders." Speaking up to this point, he paused, then said, "The next time young Master Yi sees the Pavilion Master, you can ask him for authorization. If you want, the Pavilion Master will definitely agree." Yi Xian nodded, "All right." With that, he turned and left. Fu Yi suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, just now that Qin Gu suddenly left, I'm afraid he will act recklessly." At this moment, an old man appeared in the field. The old man slightly bowed, "Young Master Yi, that Qin Gu has gone to Guanxian Academy." Hearing this, Yi Xian slightly frowned. "He went to Guanxian Academy?" The old man solemnly said, "He probably wants to take revenge on young Master Yi. I've already sent people to chase after him personally." Yi Xian shook his head, "Don't worry about him." The old man was stunned. Yi Xian lightly said, "There's a girl in Guanxian Academy, she's very fierce." With that, he turned and left. He didn't know how terrifying Qin Qiu's combat strength was, but he knew that it must be very, very terrifying. Conservatively speaking, the current Qin Qiu shouldn't be afraid of an ancient god realm expert. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt a little stifled. How terrifying was this girl in her previous life for her to be so monstrous in this life? In this world, some monstrous people were unreasonable. Yi Xian softly sighed and walked into the distance. Guanxian Academy. Qin Gu directly came to Guanxian Academy. At this moment, he had already recovered his physical body. Of course, his injuries hadn't healed, and he currently only had less than half of his peak strength. After all, his soul was injured by Yi Xian. However, he still came to Guanxian Academy. Because he had previously investigated that there wasn't a single ancient god realm expert in this academy. Although he was currently injured, he was confident that he could sweep through everything. After arriving at Guanxian Academy, Qin Gu directly roared, "Ants of Guanxian Academy, you have to blame your dean for today's disaster. He destroyed my Qin clan, so I'll destroy his academy." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. But at this moment, a woman suddenly shot up from below. In the next moment, Qin Gu's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly blasted a punch. Rumble. An explosion resounded as Qin Gu was blasted flying. He flew for over 10 kilometers, and when he finally stopped, his body had shattered into pieces. At the same time, a slender hand grabbed his throat. This woman was Qin Qiu. Qin Gu looked at Qin Qiu in horror. "You," Qin Qiu suddenly exerted force with her right hand. Boom! Qin Gu's soul was directly erased. Qin Qiu clapped her hands, glanced down, and then said, "Do what you should do." After that, she turned around and left. Everyone was speechless. Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the starry sky, and his entire body emanated faint sword intent. Needless to say, the battle from before had been really satisfying. He hadn't had such a good fight in a long time. He realized that he really needed to fight now. His biggest flaw now was that his cultivation level wasn't particularly stable, and only after his cultivation level was stable would he dare to slowly try to charge into the ancient god realm. Of course, after suffering a loss from before, he absolutely didn't dare to be too hasty now. Once he broke through and his cultivation level wasn't stable, then the gains really didn't make up for the losses. After the battle with the ninth young master, he had a rough understanding of the ninth young master's strength. Ancient God Realm. Obviously, the force behind the ninth young master definitely had even more formidable experts. In other words, the next time the ninth young master came, he might bring even more experts and stronger people. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian couldn't help but frown. Looks like I have to work harder. Otherwise, I'm afraid it won't be long before I get beaten up again. Although he could use Daebi to improve his cultivation level, there was a time limit. Once the time limit was up, he would be weak, and that would be the most dangerous time for him. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian sighed softly. He still needed more time. At this moment, he missed Xiao Ta again. If he were to join forces with Xiao Ta, they would definitely be an invincible combination, because cultivating in Xiao Ta's body was like cheating. Yi Xian sighed softly. After a while, Yi Xian continued to cultivate. Somewhere in the starry sky, the ninth young master stopped, and his face was extremely ugly. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to kill Yi Xian this time. Before coming, he promised the family that he would kill Yi Xian first, and then kill Qin Guan. However, he failed. At this time, an old man beside him said in a deep voice, "Ninth young master, I'm afraid this Yi Xian's background isn't simple." The ninth young master sneered, "So what?" The old man wanted to say something but hesitated. The ninth young master slowly closed his eyes. Old ancestor once said that our family can't provoke the legendary Yang clan. Other than that, we have nothing to fear. And this Yi Xian's surname is Yi. He has nothing to do with the Yang clan. Why should we be afraid of his extraordinary background? Yi Xian was speechless. 7017K. Chapter 2351. In the starry sky, Yi Xian quietly sat cross-legged, emitting a powerful sword intent. Originally, he thought that the sword will would be the same as before, requiring him to break through his state of mind before it could break through. But now, he realized that this was not the case at all. The sword will was getting stronger every moment, just like the activation of the mad demon bloodline. He had to admit that this shocked him, but there was also a hint of surprise. A sword intent that could grow on its own. Of course, he had also thought about why it was like this. It should be because he had founded the academy. The power of faith. The more students there were in the academy, the more people he had changed, and the stronger his sword intent and power of the world would be. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had founded the academy on a whim, but he did not expect that he would accidentally comprehend the sword intent and power of the world. It was really an unintentional willow that brought great results. Of course, this was a good thing. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and continued to stabilize his realm. Immortal Treasure Pavilion. In a room, Fu Yi and Xiaolan sat opposite each other. Both of them wore solemn expressions. They knew that the ninth young master would definitely not give up. He would definitely come again, and when he came again. Both of them did not dare to continue thinking. It was not that they were afraid of the ninth young master, but they could not contact Qin Guan. Without Qin Guan, they had no backbone. If Qin Guan was here, would the Immortal Treasure Pavilion suffer like this? At this moment, Xiaolan suddenly said, "We still have to contact the pavilion master." Fu Yi smiled bitterly, "I can't contact him. I have tried countless times, but there was no response." Xiaolan sighed softly. Fu Yi suddenly said, "For now, we can only follow young Master Yi." Yi Xian. Xiaolan nodded, "That's the only way." Now, their hope was Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in the hall. Seeing Yi Xian, both of them quickly got up and bowed. Yi Xian smiled, "You two don't have to be so polite." Xiaolan smiled, "Young Master Yi, please take a seat." Yi Xian nodded. He sat down and said, "Gentlemen, you should know what kind of enemy we're facing. This enemy is extremely powerful, and we can't contact Pavilion Master Qin. What do you think we should do?" Xiaolan hurriedly said, "We will listen to young Master Yi." Fu Yi quickly echoed, "We'll listen to young Master Yi." Yi Xian asked seriously, "Will you really listen to me?" Xiaolan nodded, "Of course." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Since all of you said that you'll listen to me, then. Alright, then I'll tell you my idea. Right now, I'm the strongest person on our side. You don't object to this, do you?" Both of them shook their heads. They had witnessed Yi Xian's strength. Although the current Yi Xian was only an ancient god realm cultivator, ordinary ancient god realm cultivators were no match for him. Yi Xian continued, "The next time ninth young master comes, he will definitely bring many experts with him. Moreover, he will definitely bring experts above the ancient god realm, right?" Both of them nodded again. Yi Xian asked again, "Can you contact Pavilion Master Qin?" Both of them shook their heads. Yi Xian quickly said, "I can improve my strength now, but there's a very big problem." At this point, he looked at the two of them and didn't say anything else. Xiaolan frowned slightly. "Young Master Yi, what problem?" Yi Xian sighed softly, as if he had something difficult to say. Xiaolan quickly said, "Young Master Yi, if there's anything we can help with, please don't hesitate to tell us." Yi Xian shook his head and sighed, "It's not easy to find you." Xiaolan was a little displeased, "Young Master Yi, not to mention your relationship with Pavilion Master, we're in the same boat now. Moreover, we still need to rely on you. You're treating us like outsiders." Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'm in need of money." Hearing this, Xiaolan's expression froze. At the side, Fu Yi glanced at Yi Xian, then at Xiaolan, not saying a word. In any case, he had no money. And this Xiaolan definitely had money. After all, he was in charge of the Immortal Treasure City's Immortal Treasure Pavilion. All the finances went to him first, and then he passed them to Qin Guan. However, he also knew that Xiaolan could not use this money as he pleased. At this time, Xiaolan smiled bitterly, "Young Master Yi," Yi Xian said with a smile, "Trouble?" Xiaolan nodded honestly, "Young Master Yi, I won't lie to you. Right now, I am indeed in charge of a lot of time veins. However, I have no authority to deal with these time veins. Only Pavilion Master has the authority to deal with these time veins. If I deal with them, it will violate the rules set by Pavilion Master. The consequences will be extremely serious." Yi Xian was silent. Fu Yi suddenly said, "Young Master Yi is not someone else." Xiaolan glared at Fu Yi, "Damn, this idiot's words were easy to say." Fu Yi said seriously, "Brother Xiao, I'm not trying to trick you. This matter is urgent, so you can be flexible. Of course, young Master Yi definitely can't make things difficult for you. How about this, let young Master Yi give you a guarantee. In the future, he will talk to Pavilion Master about this matter. It has nothing to do with you. What do you think?" Xiaolan was silent. Yi Xian smiled and was about to speak when Xiaolan suddenly said, "There's no need to do this, young Master Yi. You don't need to give me a guarantee. From now on, I will give you all the time veins in Immortal Treasure City's Immortal Treasure Pavilion." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a square box appeared in his hand. At the side, Fu Yi glanced at Xiaolan, and he was slightly shocked and astonished in his heart. Xiaolan is really bold. He knew that the consequences of using the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's finances without permission were extremely serious. Xiaolan was undoubtedly gambling with his future. If Yi Xian didn't have any weight in Qin Guan's heart, then Xiaolan would be completely dead. Because this rule couldn't be broken. Once it was broken, the pavilion master outside might follow suit. At that time, there would be endless trouble. As the pavilion master, it was impossible for Xiaolan to not see this, but he still did it. Obviously, Xiaolan was gambling. If he won, then it was equivalent to selling a huge favor to Yi Xian. Moreover, Qin Guan might even promote him. This was a huge gamble, gambling that the relationship between Yi Xian and Qin Guan was indescribably good. Fu Yi sighed in his heart. He had to admit that he admired Xiaolan. This was why Xiaolan's realm was lower than his, but Xiaolan could become the pavilion master while he could only be a hired thug. Vision, breadth of mind, and courage. Yi Xian looked at the box in front of him and smiled, "Thank you." As he spoke, he took the box and opened it. In the next moment, his pupils shrank and his heartbeat sped up. 1.2 billion universe veins. This box actually contained 1.2 billion universe veins. Too terrifying. Yi Xian suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at Xiaolan. Xiaolan's expression was calm and he didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled, "Thank you, Pavilion Master Xiao." As he spoke, he removed the Dedeabi from his waist and handed it to Xiaolan. "Take it." Xiaolan hesitated for a moment before taking the Dedeabi. Boom! Suddenly, Xiaolan's aura skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, his aura directly reached the ancient god realm. Xiaolan was stunned. Yi Xian smiled, "Don't think too much about it. Carefully feel it and it will help you break through." Xiaolan immediately bowed to Yi Xian. He naturally knew what this meant to him. It was a peerless opportunity. It really wasn't that easy to reach the ancient god realm. If there wasn't a fortuitous encounter, many people wouldn't be able to break through in their lifetime. But now, he had this fortuitous encounter. Yi Xian smiled, "Pavilion Master Xiao, I won't take these 1.2 billion universe veins for nothing. In the future, I will return it to Qin Guan. Of course, this is between me and her. Don't worry, she won't blame you for this. Even if she really blames you, you can follow me. I will recommend you to the Yang clan." Hearing this, Xiaolan immediately bowed again. Yi Xian smiled. "You should focus on cultivating." As he spoke, he withdrew the Dedeabi and turned to leave. Fu Yi glanced at Xiaolan and smiled bitterly, "Brother Xiao, this is a great fortuitous encounter." Xiaolan smiled, "I'm indebted to young Master Yi for thinking so highly of me." Fu Yi shook his head with a complicated smile. Most of the time, being a person was more important than being able to do things. Yi Xian returned to his starry sky. He glanced at the spatial ring in his hand, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Now, he could cultivate instant invincibility once more. Of course, he didn't dare to cultivate it recklessly. It was a bit ridiculous to spend at least 30 million universe veins to cultivate it once. Besides that, he was preparing to charge into the ancient god realm in 2 months. In fact, his current realm was already unheard of. However, it wasn't stable enough. Thus, he decided to stabilize it for another 2 months. He didn't want to make any more mistakes in terms of realm. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stood silently with the sword burial in his hand. Yi Xian was like an old monk in meditation. At the same time, he madly burned his universe veins. As his universe veins burned, strands of terrifying spiritual energy surged into his body, and the sword burial in his hand trembled slightly. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, the sword burial in his hand stabbed forward. Qi! In front of Yi Xian, the current universe's spacetime split open. In the next moment, Yi Xian jumped out of this current universe. After jumping out, he didn't attack immediately. Instead, an idea suddenly appeared in his mind. Can I use Void Slash in this spacetime? Thinking of this, Yi Xian decided to give it a try. In the next moment, a sword suddenly appeared in the distant starry sky. Chi! Wherever the sword landed, space-time shattered. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned. He found that he could use Void Slash. Although its power wasn't as strong as instant invincibility, this sword was very strange. Most importantly, it consumed very few universe veins. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He found that he was suitable to be an assassin. Thinking of this, Yi Xian frowned slightly. Why couldn't he be an assassin? 2 months passed. Yi Xian's realm had completely stabilized. Just as he was about to charge into the ancient god realm, a terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped the entire immortal treasure city. In the starry sky, Yi Xian, who was cultivating, slowly raised his head. It's here. P.S. I call myself the water god, and you are my readers. Then, are you my water army? Hee hee. 7017K. Chapter 2352. In the sky above Immortal Treasure City, a man stood quietly. This person was the 9th young master. Today, the 9th young master was wearing a loose and luxurious robe. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and a white jade hung on his waist. In his hand, he was still holding the folding fan. Behind the 9th young master, there was an old man. This old man had white hair, a thin body, and his eyes were slightly closed. There was no aura around him. One look and anyone could tell that he was an expert. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of the 9th young master. The 9th young master sized up Yi Xian and squinted his eyes. You seem to have become much stronger. Yi Xian smiled. 9th young master, let's cut the crap. What a waste of time. Let's get straight to the point. How are you going to fight today? At this moment, the old man behind the 9th young master suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze landed on Yi Xian. The next moment, his gaze landed on the Dadeabi on Yi Xian's waist. When he saw Dadeabi, he frowned slightly, but very quickly, he closed his eyes again. After hearing Yi Xian's words, the 9th young master laughed. Yi Xian, you are not just an ordinary kind of arrogance. Do you know that there was someone who was as arrogant as you in front of me? Do you know how he is now? As he spoke, he raised his right hand and smiled. The grass on his grave is already several zhang tall. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, if you want to act cool, then continue. I will watch quietly. As he spoke, he retreated to the side. Everyone, the 9th young master stared at Yi Xian, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Since you want to die so quickly, then I will fulfill your wish. Today, you and I will fight one-on-one. One-on-one. Yi Xian glanced at the 9th young master and nodded, all right. The 9th young master smiled and was about to speak, but at this moment, the space in front of him suddenly split open. The next moment, a sword broke through the space and slashed towards his face. The 9th young master squinted his eyes and opened his folding fan to block. Boom! The sword light was blocked, and the 9th young master retreated several thousand feet. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above him. In the next moment, a sword slashed down from the top of his head. Chi! A sharp voice resounded throughout the entire celestial treasure city. In an instant, the entire celestial treasure city split apart. Xiaolan and the rest's expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly activated the defensive formation and repaired the space-time. In the air, when the 9th young master saw the sword slashing towards him, a sinister glint flashed in his eyes. With a twist of his wrist, the folding fan in his hands suddenly opened. In the next instant, a malevolent-looking demonic beast directly rushed out. Boom! An explosion resounded like a thunderclap. In the next moment, both Yi Xian and the 9th young master retreated explosively at the same time. As they retreated explosively, the entire sky was crushed into pieces, and it was an extremely astounding scene. After stopping, just as Yi Xian was about to attack again, he seemed to have thought of something. He glanced at the city below and frowned. I can't fight here. If we continue fighting like this, the entire celestial treasure city will be destroyed because the city can't withstand the terrifying strength of him and the ninth young master. Thinking up to here, Yi Xian looked at the ninth young master and said, let's go somewhere else. As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't wait for the ninth young master's reply and directly transformed into a sword light that disappeared into the horizon. The ninth young master sneered and directly disappeared on the spot. In a short while, Yi Xian and the ninth young master arrived at a deathly silent starfield. This starfield was boundless, and there were no living beings. It was the perfect place for battle. Yi Xian turned to look at the ninth young master. The ninth young master was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, stop. Let's not talk about acting cool anymore. Let's fight properly. I really hate people who act cool the most. As soon as he finished speaking, he directly disappeared on the spot. Chi! A sword light directly tore through space-time and slashed towards the ninth young master. The ninth young master sneered, charged forward, and smashed down with his fan. Rumble. The sword light was directly smashed away, and at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. The ninth young master squinted his eyes, and with a thought, a golden light suddenly enveloped his body. Yi Xian's sword fell. Boom! Yi Xian's sword slashed down, and the golden light violently trembled. In the next moment, the two of them both retreated rapidly. After Yi Xian stopped, he looked at his slightly numb arm. Then he looked at the ninth young master. At this moment, the ninth young master's body was covered in a thin layer of golden light, and this golden light had blocked all of his strength. The ninth young master sneered, Yi Xian, do you think you're the only one with a defensive divine artifact? I also have one, haha. Yi Xian glanced at the ninth young master's storage ring, and thought, this damn guy has quite a lot of treasures. The ninth young master was about to make a move when Yi Xian suddenly said, wait. The ninth young master frowned slightly, what are you doing? Yi Xian pointed at the old man a few kilometers to the right, and he sneered, what is he doing? The ninth young master said indifferently, he followed me, why? Yi Xian smiled, are we having a fair fight? The ninth young master looked at Yi Xian, yes. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, to be honest, although you and I are opponents, I still admire you. After all, among the younger generation, only you, the ninth young master, can suppress me. Today, I wanted to have a fair fight with you. Even if I die in your hands, I, Yi Xian, will accept it. But I didn't expect. At this point, he changed the topic and sneered, I didn't expect that you didn't want to have a fair fight with me at all. You brought someone here just to let him fight when you can't beat me, right? The ninth young master glanced at the old man in the distance, and then he said, he won't fight. Yi Xian laughed, ninth young master, you and I are both kids. Do you even believe what you said? Let me ask you, if your life is in danger, will he help? The ninth young master fell silent, if his life is in danger, then this old man will definitely help. Yi Xian asked again, this is the fair fight you speak of? Ninth young master, do you not have confidence in yourself? Although I, Yi Xian, am not talented, I didn't call anyone to fight you fairly. Look at those experts from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, not a single one of them came. Why? Because I, Yi Xian, respect you, the ninth young master, as a real man. If I say I will fight you fairly, then I will definitely not play any tricks or play any tricks. But what about you? You said you will have a fair fight with me, but you still brought a super expert to watch over you. With him pressuring you from the side, you are already in an invincible position. Moreover, he glanced at me from time to time, causing me to feel pressured, so I have to divert some of my attention to him. At this point, he shook his head and smiled, ninth young master, is this what you mean by a fair fight? I don't think you should have a fair fight. Just fight him together. In any case, you will do the same as you fight, so why don't you fight me together now? The ninth young master glanced at Yi Xian, and then said, don't worry, I said I will fight you one-on-one, so I will fight you one-on-one. I won't let anyone interfere. After saying that, he looked at the old man in the distance. Lord Apotheon, leave this universe. Also, no matter who wins or loses, you are not allowed to fight. Apotheon glanced at Yi Xian. This kid is trying to provoke me. The ninth young master sneered. How can I not see through his little tricks? It's just that in the face of absolute strength, these tricks have no effect. Lord Apotheon, let me have a fair fight with him. I have no reason to lose to someone from a lower universe, right? Apotheon glanced at Yi Xian, then turned around and disappeared at the end of the starry sky. Now, only Yi Xian and the ninth young master were left in the entire starry sky. The ninth young master looked at Yi Xian. Is that enough? Yi Xian gave a thumbs up. Ninth young master, you're really something. The ninth young master chuckled. I know you're trying to provoke me, but I don't care. What I want to tell you is that if I have to call for help to fight you one-on-one, wouldn't that make me look incompetent? With that said, he smiled slightly. Yi Xian, you can die now. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up. In the next moment, the shadow of a monster swooped down towards Yi Xian from above. Rumble. In an instant, this part of the galaxy boiled up. Down below, Yi Xian's expression was calm as he slowly closed his eyes. When the demonic beast reached the top of his head, suddenly, several beams of sword light directly slashed at the demonic beast. Rumble. The demonic beast let out a shrill cry and immediately fled back into the folding fan. At this moment, the ninth young master was already on top of Yi Xian's head. His hands were spread open, and in his hands were two balls of pitch-black flames. The moment these two balls of flames appeared, the entire universe started to burn. Yi Xian frowned slightly. This fire is really terrifying. The ninth young master looked at Yi Xian below and grinned. Yi Xian, do you know what kind of fire this is? This is the chaos black fire, the most evil and evil fire in the world. It can corrode all divine objects. With that said, the corners of his mouth gradually widened. Yi Xian, let me see if your defensive artifact is stronger, or if my chaos black fire is stronger. As his voice fell, he threw both of his hands down. Rumble. In an instant, two clusters of flames swept down from the sky. At this moment, the endless galaxy began to be erased bit by bit. It was extremely terrifying. Below, Yi Xian looked at the two clusters of flames flying towards him with a grave expression. He sensed danger. It was obvious that the ninth young master had specially prepared these two clusters of flames for him. These two clusters of flames were definitely not ordinary divine objects. Should I escape? This thought flashed through Yi Xian's mind, but he immediately rejected the idea. I'm wearing Arya's armor. Who is Arya? She was the little girl who once withstood a blow from Qing's sword. Yi Xian's expression suddenly became ferocious. Arya, the eternal god. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly opened his arms and did not dodge. Very quickly, the two clusters of flames swept down and engulfed Yi Xian in an instant. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian was in the middle of a sea of flames. In the starry sky, the ninth young master stared at Yi Xian in the sea of flames. Very quickly, his pupils shrank and his eyes were filled with disbelief. At this moment, Yi Xian was actually devouring the sea of flames. He was devouring the sea of flames. In the sea of flames, Yi Xian laughed maniacally. Arya, the eternal god. Ha. 7017K. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.